Han Li's Wuxia Adventures. Chapter 2439. When Sir Jojo heard Commander Fong mention the beautiful scenery along the way and the various snacks sold along the river, he couldn't help but become interested. When he heard that they could make it to the annual Steamed Bun Festival, he couldn't help but be curious. I heard that the Steamed Bun Festival has been around for a long time. Whoever can find the pill in the steamed bun will receive a generous reward. You can eat the steamed bun while eating the digestive pills you brought. If you don't have enough pills, you can ask a pill refiner to make it for you on the spot. Until you find the pill in the 100,000 steamed buns and win the grand prize. Cough. Commander Fong said expressionlessly, "This competition is a little stupid, but many people participate." During the Steamed Bun Festival last year, someone ate more than 800 steamed buns and died the next day. Arbor.molien. Ha 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 ha. Is there a need for that, idiot? Crown Princess, you must believe me. There are really people who risk their lives to participate in this competition. Because the grand prize will not only give you 50,000 spirit coins, but also many precious pills. Last year, the first place winner received a heaven-level dragon grass. This general has heard that heaven-grade medicinal herbs are sought after by many alchemists. So the person who died last year from eating too much steamed bun. Miss Chiao's face was expressionless, and the twitching of her mouth showed that she was not calm. He was a pill refiner from the pill house. Molien.arbor. It was hard to imagine that someone would risk their life to participate in this steamed bun eating competition for a stalk of dragon grass. Why didn't they go to heaven? So those digestive pills. They are refined by the pill refiners themselves, but it's also possible that when they eat the steamed bun on the spot, they feel that it's not enough. In that case, they can also ask other pill refiners to refine it for them, but in this way, they may have to share the prize with others. Then let's go to the westward pavilion. Sir Jojo suddenly had the mood to go see that group of idiots. Okay. Commander Fong didn't even notice that he actually heaved a sigh of relief. He finally tricked the Crown Princess. This was great, at least it could shorten the journey by a month. The Emperor was anxiously waiting in the capital, and his eyes were probably about to fall out the next day. The little girl boarded a large ship that Commander Fong had prepared for them. They entered the Weishi River and headed towards Dragon Flame City. To be honest, there wasn't much to see in the vast river before his eyes for the past few days. Since there was still plenty of time, Arbor decided to sneak back to Planet Fish Orchid. He summoned the seed fragment and absorbed it into his Dantian star zone. This was not the first time Jojo had absorbed the seed fragments, so the reaction was naturally better. It was obviously not as big as the first time. Furthermore, she had advanced by absorbing spirit power from the fish orchid planet. Therefore, the people outside had no idea what had happened to her. After spending a day and a night on Planet Fish Orchid, Arbor opened his eyes. He felt the power in his body. This time, after absorbing the seed fragments, her cultivation had directly increased from level 8 Little Spiritual Master to level 10 Great Spiritual Master. This kind of cultivation speed was already very fast. Although the current him was still far from being comparable to the disciples of some clans in the Divine Prefecture. But it didn't matter. Arbor thought that he would catch up with them soon. Chapter 2440. Big Brother. Ollie walked in with a dark expression. That guy left a few days ago on a golden dragon. I heard that he had a little girl with him when he left. Hearing this, Bakir jumped up from the stool. Brother Yassi, are you talking about the Crown Prince of the Mo Kingdom? Ollie pursed his lips. Akir, I already said last time that this isn't the Crown Prince of the tiny Mo Kingdom. That's the Crown Prince of the Divine Prefecture. Akir's eyes were filled with dissatisfaction and disbelief. I thought you were joking. Then doesn't that mean that the woman who married the Crown Prince of the Mo Kingdom has become the Crown Princess of the Divine Prefecture? Ming Yassi's face was dark, and he didn't say anything. Akir carefully glanced at Ming Yasi's expression, secretly pleased with herself. However, her expression didn't change. She patted her chest and said softly, "But it's not possible. How could a woman with no background from a rundown village be acknowledged by others when she came to the divine prefecture and returned to the imperial capital? Don't say that the emperor of the divine prefecture wouldn't acknowledge such a shameless daughter-in-law. Even the civil and military officials of the court, the aristocratic families, none of them would acknowledge her existence." As she said this, she couldn't help but laugh gloatingly. How could such a poor woman from a village catch the eye of the emperor of the divine prefecture? How could she catch the eye of the aristocratic families of Dragon Flame City? There was an 80% chance that when she returned, she would be subjected to everyone's disdain. Everyone would treat her like trash and sweep her aside. Otherwise, they would treat her as a little transparent and not even speak a word to her to avoid lowering her status. She didn't even need to think carefully to analyze how difficult that Xiao woman's days in Dragon Flame City would be in the future. In any case, she would suffer. "Shut up." Ming Yasi waved his hand and slapped Akir without hesitation. "You talk too much. Get out." Akir covered her face with one hand and looked at Ming Yasi with eyes full of shock and shame. "Brother Yasi, why you hit me for that woman? It was for her, right? It must be because of that bitch." She had only verbally scolded that bitch and mocked her a little. Was that enough to make Brother Yas unhappy? "Throw her out." Ming Yasi waved his hand in annoyance. He didn't want to listen to this woman's incessant nagging, especially the words, "Crown Princess of the Divine Land," which kept lingering in his ears. It was really annoying to listen to. "Ah, Brother Yas, Brother Yas." Akir was rudely shoved out by the bodyguards. Not long after, a guard hurriedly walked in and bowed to Ming Yasi. He walked up and whispered in his ear, "Imperial Noble Consort requests that you return as soon as possible." "What is it?" He had already obtained the Snowfield Divine Flower, so this trip had not been in vain. However, for some reason, Yas felt extremely displeased. The Underworld Province Guard handed over a red, gilded invitation. Dark Yas glanced at it, then slammed it shut with a furious smack. "Return to Underworld Province." Ali heaved a sigh of relief. They should have returned long ago. Anyway, they had already picked the Snowfield Divine Flower. There was no point in staying in Flat Mountain Town. He just didn't know what Big Brother was waiting for. Ming Yasi glanced at Ali. He didn't know what he was angry about either. He just felt that something was wrong. Chapter 2441. The two banks of Wuxia River were densely packed with people. Grain ships and cargo ships were all gathered here. The boatmen were busy moving the goods in the cold wind of the winter night, fighting for the last ray of light. Their noses seemed to have faintly smelled the fragrance of food. It was going to be night soon, and the lights on both banks were lit up. Rows upon rows of restaurants and shops by the river, food stalls and sundry goods stalls were energetically shouting for the last wave of business. Some young masters were drinking wine and drinking tea in the tea houses and wine shops. It was poetic and picturesque, and what entered their eyes was a bustling and elegant beautiful night scene of Wuxia River. While the peddlers and laborers were tired from running in the cold wind, their footsteps hurriedly returning home. The boats on the river were like shuttles, connected from head to tail. The boatmen pulled the boats and roared, the boatmen rocked, and the singing girls sent bursts of wind into the wind. A two-story official boat followed the slowly flowing river, slowly approaching the Wuxia corridor built across the river. The entire corridor was built on the river surface. Although it was late at night, the corridor was filled with peddlers and pedestrians, selling all kinds of things. Miss Chiao had been sitting at the bow of the boat since early in the morning, holding 2 Wuxia eggs, using the excuse of basking in the sun to help the eggs hatch. It was already late at night, and seeing that there was no movement from the eggs, she could not help but lean on the railing of the boat with a gloomy expression. When Mo Lien found his way to the deck, he saw the little fellow shaking her small head as she sighed in despair. That long ponytail at the back of her head swept back and forth around her waist. He could not help but laugh and quickly walked up, hugging her small waist from behind, and pecked her little face without any explanation. "What are you doing? It's going to be cold at night, and you're still standing here to enjoy the wind." The little girl turned around, her eyes were extremely bright in the dark night, sparkling like stars. Her two little claws were holding on to two weishi eggs the size of pigeon eggs. She looked at him with a gloomy expression and said, "It's been so long, and they still haven't hatched. Do you think they're fake eggs?" Mo Lien could not help but be amused. He lowered his head and pressed against her smooth forehead, chuckling softly, "Not cooking anymore. Hey! You're the one who cooked the phoenix egg and ate it." The little fellow looked unhappy. She looked at him and said with conviction, "Who's a foodie like you?" Mo Lien laughed out loud. She hugged her and swayed her little body. I'm a glutton." Sir Jojo snorted and glanced at him. He rubbed his head against his chest and asked, "Is it okay for us to dock in the middle of the river for one night?" "It's no big deal." Mo Lien smiled and hugged her waist. She raised her finger and pointed ahead. "Look, there are many boats docked there. They are all waiting to participate in the steamed bun festival tomorrow morning." Arbor's eyesight was good. He had already seen many stacked steamers placed in front of the Weishi corridor. At this time, Fang Su walked over and bowed without looking sideways, completely ignoring the two's closeness. "Your Highness the Crown Prince, do you want this humble servant to arrange for you to stay in Langfang for a night?" The 30-li Weishi corridor was built on top of the river in such a charming manner. It could be said that it almost crossed half of the Weishi River. Naturally, there were places to eat and sleep on top of Langfang. "We came so late. There's still a place to stay on top of Langfang?" Arbor blinked and asked. Fang Su cupped his hands and said respectfully, replying to the Crown Princess, "If your Highness the Crown Prince and you want to go, there's naturally a place to stay." Even if there wasn't, he had to make it. Chapter 2442. Prince Mo smiled and lowered his head to look at his baby. He asked softly, "Jojo, do you want to go to the gallery?" "I don't think so." Miss Qiao looked at the bustling crowd in the gallery and pursed her lips in disinterest. The entrance to the gallery was already crowded with people. Perhaps the people who were participating in the Manta Festival and came from nearby cities were also here today. It would be more comfortable to spend a night on her own boat than to go up and squeeze with so many people. She would go up and squeeze with them tomorrow. Then I'll ask someone to prepare dinner." Prince Mo hugged her waist and tightened his arms. "What do you want to eat?" "Fish." Sir Jojo's eyes lit up. "The kind that's fried." "Okay." Mo Lien nodded. "I heard that Wei Shijiang is most famous for its osmanthus fried fish. There's also super spicy fish head soup. Do you want to eat it?" Sir Jojo nodded repeatedly and rubbed his little belly. He was hungry. Mo Lien immediately turned to Fang Su and said, "Go, find a chef who can make this famous dish." Fang Su's mouth twitched silently. He suddenly felt like his heart had been hurt 10,000 times. He still didn't know why he felt so blue and thin in his heart. In fact, this was the invisible lethal effect of a young couple on a single dog. "Reporting to your Highness, the chef on the boat is an imperial chef brought by eunuch Hu. He knows how to make this dish." "All right then, bring me over to take a look." He lowered his head and kissed his little wife, then personally draped a brocade cloak on her. "Be good and wear it when it's cold at night. Jojo, play here for a while more. Your husband will come after he's done making the delicious food." Fong Su felt like he had nothing left to live for. He didn't know that this was a feeling of suffocation after eating too much dog food. He followed Mo Lien with a puzzled expression. "Master, you're going to the kitchen." Fong Su never expected that the dignified crown prince of the divine prefecture would wash his hands and make soup for his wife. Mr. Jojo had a puzzled look on his face. He felt that Su's glance before he left made him look like an idiot. What was he looking at? She looked down at the 2 pigeon eggs in her hand and felt a little worried. Of these 2 eggs, one was light purple and the other was black. They looked slippery, and when he pressed his finger on them, the surface of the eggs sank in softly. It was as if he could see the little life flowing inside. "Forget it, it's the middle of the night, and there's no more essence of heaven and earth. I'll just keep it and take it out to dry tomorrow." Miss Chiao thought to herself, "Son more, it'll come out one day." After putting away the 2 eggs and pulling the cloak on her shoulders, the little girl leaned against the railing and unwrapped a string of emerald green bracelets from time to play with them. Looking at the round bead being tossed up, sliding down an arc in the night sky and falling into the river, creating a ripple, the little girl was quite happy playing with it. There were many large boats parked around the corridor, dozens of dazzling pleasure boats. Their 2-story official boat seemed very low-key and deserted among the dozens of large boats. There were only 2 faint palace lanterns hanging on the deck, and there was a ray of dim yellow light in the cabin. Other than that, the whole boat looked dark and gloomy. It was unlike the pleasure boats opposite them that were filled with singing and dancing. The female singers sang songs and sent them into the night against the wind. Dozens of red lanterns hung high on the deck of the boat, illuminating their graceful figures as they danced at the bow of the boat. At this moment, a golden and jade pleasure boat slowly glided past the boat they were anchored in. Chapter 2443. Arbor saw an 18 or 19-year-old youth in white standing at the bow of the boat, gazing at the river with his hands clasped behind his back. Like a clear breeze and bright moon, he stood tall and straight. The river breeze blew up his white robes, and his long hair gently undulated against his waist. His cold gaze appeared very apathetic under the lamplight as he slowly glided past her family's boat. Miss Chiao had already tossed out the dark green pearl in her hand, so she saw that pearl just so happened to land on the opposite boat's bow with a gurgle and rolled all the way to the youth's feet. The youth's apathetic gaze drifted in her direction, his face covered in frost. He looked at her as if he was looking at something dirty like a rag. Xiao Qiao blinked and then looked at the few remaining beads in her hand expressionlessly. She then threw them all into the river. The little stoic's eyes didn't even move as she woodenly glanced at her little brother before retracting her gaze. She then took out a string of translucent white bracelets from her inner world and continued to toss them around for fun after tearing them apart. "Young master." Ling Gu hastily ran up to the deck and saw her young master standing stiffly at the bow of the boat, his gaze fixed on the opposite boat. She hastily turned around to look, but that pleasure boat had already passed by in front of Jojo. Ling Gu only saw half of an official boat's flag and didn't see anything else. There were truly too many boats anchored near the Langfang. She didn't know what power that golden pleasure boat used, but after the discussion ended, it drove away the boat that was originally anchored next to Jojo's and anchored itself there. Miss Chiao naturally didn't know what was going on. She only vaguely heard a small commotion on the river, but it quickly stopped. She was already tearing apart her 3rd string of pearls, so she was really bored lying on the railing. Suddenly, she saw a plump and graceful woman carrying a pipa walk out of the pleasure boat with tall lanterns on the opposite boat. As soon as this woman walked out, half of the river stirred up a commotion. Applause abruptly rang out along with a group of laughter. "Wan Hong Lu's Miss Meng has come out. Ha ha ha. Today's trip was really worth it. To be able to listen to Miss Meng's pipa, I can truly die without regrets." Arbor rubbed his flat belly and threw a pearl in his hand. When he turned his head, he happened to see a white-clothed youth walking out from the 3rd floor of the golden jade pleasure boat parked next door. It was the guy who had looked at her as if she was a rag. At this moment, he was looking down at him with a cold expression, his eyes filled with mockery and disdain. Miss Chiao was baffled as she lowered her head to look at her petite body. Very good. She was wearing a fluffy pink cotton-padded jacket and a brocade cloak. She looked like a porcelain doll carved from jade. She didn't look like an abandoned rag at all. This person must be sick. It was more likely that there was something wrong with his vision. Miss Chiao's gaze turned and looked at Miss Meng, who was bashfully playing the pipa with tenderness in her eyes. However, Miss Meng's playing was quite good. The river breeze blew gently, and the sound of the pipa was slow. Miss Chiao felt as if there was a cup of tea missing. She casually wiped her hand and took out a cup of hot spiritual tea from her inner world. As she drank, she admired the pipa music on the opposite side. Anyway, it didn't cost money. Just listen to it. If it could be accompanied by a song and dance, it wouldn't be so monotonous. Chapter 2444. Just as she thought about the lack of singing and dancing, the pleasure boat opposite her considerately released a few singers and dancers. They started to dance and sing behind the pipa player. Looking at these girls who were exposing their arms and legs in the cold wind, Miss Chiao tugged at the brocade cloak on her body. It was so cold. Looking at these girls, none of them were cultivators. It was really not easy to earn money by dancing and singing on this empty river on such a cold day. It was so hard, but no one rewarded her. They were all listening to her songs and watching her dance. Arbor shook his head and looked at them sympathetically. If someone saw Miss Chiao's expression at this moment, they would definitely burst out laughing. Good. It was unknown which idiot on the river shouted. Sir Jojo poked his head out from the railing of the boat and looked towards the source of the sound. From her angle, she could only see some densely packed boats. Other than that, she really could not see anything else. However, she did not need to continue looking around. The guy who had called out, "Good," suddenly flew up into the air. It was unknown which boat he had come from, but in an instant, he landed on the deck of the pleasure boat on the opposite side. He stretched out a folding fan and held up the chin of the pipa girl on the opposite side. He smiled and said, "Miss Meng really played the pipa well. I'll pay 1,000 spirit coins to ask Miss Meng to play the pipa for me for a night." TSK, you only have 1,000 spirit coins and you still have the nerve to bid. Miss Meng, I'll pay 2,000 spirit coins. I'll pay 3,000. One bid after another broke the bustle on the river. Almost all the people on the boats ran over to the deck to watch the show. A middle-aged woman walked out from the pleasure boat opposite them. She stretched out her hands and gestured downwards. Her voice was steadily transmitted into the wind. If you want to listen to Miss Meng play the pipa for a night, the starting bid must be 5,000 spirit coins. Fuck, it's really shady. What's the background of this Miss Meng? Why is her value so high? She's the star of the Myriad Red House. Her value is naturally high. Hey, is that pleasure boat opposite us from the Qin estate? It looks like the clan emblem of the Qin estate. Yes, yes, yes. It seems to be from the Qin estate. After Miss Meng finished her song, she stood up and bowed to everyone. She said softly, "Thank you for your love. This little girl is not talented, I only have one hand on the pipa, which is pleasing to the ears." It was said that Zi Qin, one of the 5 dukes of the Qin estate, was proficient in chess, calligraphy, and painting. She was especially proficient in playing the zither. She was even able to transmit her voice into the rhythm, which was extremely moving. This little girl is not talented, so I would like to ask 5th young master to give me some pointers. Everyone quickly laughed and said, "Miss Meng is too modest." That's right, that's right. I love listening to Miss Meng's lute nocturne. Her playing isn't inferior to 5th young master Qin's. So it really is the Qin estate's pleasure boat. Fifth young Master Qin's zither skills are unparalleled in the world. How can Miss Meng compare with him? When Arbor saw that they were only talking and not performing, he lost interest and continued to lie down. The pearls in his hand were thrown away one by one. Suddenly, that Miss Meng slightly exclaimed. It turned out that the young master who had jumped onto the deck first and bid 1,000 spirit coins had forcefully pulled her into his embrace, causing Miss Meng to exclaim in surprise. I bid 5,000 spirit coins. That vulgar young man smiled and raised his hand. Miss Meng, your lover today is me, UFA. Arbor, who was originally lazily lying down on the railing, suddenly narrowed his eyes. A dangerous aura was emitted from his body. Chapter 24:45. The little stoic looked coldly at the pleasure boat across from them. She carefully sized it up and seemed to recall something. She reached out and took out several pieces of drawing paper from her inner world. She pulled out one of them and carefully compared it to the sloppy man under the light. As expected, it was this UFA. He was one of Yu Baishan's 2 sons who ran away from Shuntian Prefecture with the Yu family, one of the 3 patrician families in Wenka City. It was truly a case of wearing out iron shoes in a fruitless search only to find by sheer luck. Ever since Yu Batian, that old geezer, ran away, Jojo had been suppressing his anger. He and others schemed against Jojo behind his back, so Jojo wouldn't let them off so easily. Arbor's gaze hardened, and she kicked the railing with the tip of her foot. She then leaped up and headed for the pleasure boat across from them. The 2 hidden guards hidden in the shadows, not good. The crown princess was stirring up trouble again. After lightly landing on the pleasure boat, Arbor summoned her ferule and hit the back of UFA's hand without another word. UFA was startled and wanted to retract his hand, but he didn't expect to hear a crisp slap next to his ear. His entire arm went numb from the ferule and drooped down at once. Miss Meng was stupefied. She had seen heroes saving the damsel in distress, but she had never seen a beautiful girl saving the damsel in distress. The middle-aged woman on the pleasure boat was also a bit surprised. She was about to step forward to mediate the conflict, but she didn't expect that the little girl who suddenly flew onto the boat would kick her without any explanation. This time, it hit UFA squarely in the stomach. With a fierce kick, UFA was sent flying, crashing heavily into the window frame. His entire body was embedded in the window frame of the boat, and his 2 legs were dangling. There was absolute silence everywhere. Everyone was stupefied by this unforeseen turn of events. They had seen people fighting over Song'an dance dancers, but they had never seen a little girl board a boat to fight over Song'an dance dancers. Was there still justice in this? Arbor didn't care what other people thought and directly walked up. She dragged UFA's legs and threw him to the ground with a look of disdain. After being thrown by the little stoic, UFA looked like a dead pig that was thrown to the ground. His legs even twitched reflexively. Everyone. Don't, little madam. Let's talk things out. The middle-aged woman on the pleasure boat suddenly had an idea. She stopped her with a frown and said with an apologetic smile, "What man doesn't cheat? Even if your husband came to our pleasure boat to seek pleasure, young madam, you can't beat him up like this in front of so many of us. I have to give him some face." "What nonsense are you spouting?" Xiao Mu interrupted the middle-aged woman's words and forcefully flung aside the arm that was blocking her. She then raised her leg and kicked UFA's thigh. Everyone only heard a crisp, "Kacha" sound, and they were immediately speechless. "Hey, don't hit me, don't hit me." The middle-aged woman's face was bitter, and she quickly reached out to stop Arbor. "Out of the way." Arbor pushed the woman to the side impatiently. He jumped forward and kicked UFA so hard that he flipped onto his back. He asked angrily, "Where's your father?" Everyone was speechless. What kind of trick was this? Why did they have an inexplicable urge to burst into laughter? Did she really freaking come here to capture her husband? Then why did she have to ask about his father? UFA looked at the girl in front of him in horror, completely unaware of how he had offended her. His face was as white as a sheet of paper, and he repeatedly asked, You, who are you, who are you? Arbor's gaze turned fierce. I'm asking you where Ubadian is. Chapter 2446. UFA was completely stupefied. His face was unbelievably pale as he repeatedly shouted, I don't know what are you talking about? Stop pretending. The little stoic apathetically took out several wanted posters from her sleeve and pulled out one of them. She shook it in front of UFA and read aloud, UFA. Male. 26 years old. 3rd level wood spiritual cultivator. Ubatian's second son. Huey's younger brother, Tuo's second older brother. Everyone. Good heavens, there really was a detailed description attached to a wanted poster. However, what was with this inexplicable comical feeling? You still want to deceive Jojo. It's all written here. You still want to deny it? Do you think the whole world is retarded just because you're retarded? The little girl angrily kicked UFA in the stomach. Speak. Where is that old geezer Ubadian hiding? If you confess to him, I'll spare your lowly life. UFA suddenly had an urge to cry. What kind of bad luck did he have today? How did he encounter this kind of ancestor? If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have acted cool and jumped up to tease Miss Meng. Look at the situation now, he really couldn't get out of the situation. No matter how he looked at it, he felt sad and pitiful. Great aunt. Great aunt. You listen to me, speak. Speak. UFA pulled a long face and shrunk back uncontrollably in lingering fear. That my dad. Ever since I came to the Divine Province, I really haven't seen him. Great aunt, every injustice has its perpetrator, every debt has its debtor. If you have any enmity or grudge, you can find my dad and not me. I'm innocent. Great aunt. Everyone. Miss Xiao looked at him expressionlessly. Leaving you alive is also a scourge. No, I definitely won't be a scourge, no. No. UFA's brain spasmed, and he hastily knelt down and kowtowed piously. Great aunt. Oh, my dear great aunt. I, UFA, can swear to the heavens that I only want to eat, drink, be merry, and follow my heart in this life. I don't want to care about the Yu family's lousy affairs. Please spare me, spare me. Arbor looked at him impassively. UFA hurriedly knelt on the ground and cupped his hands as he cried out, I swear. If I, UFA, say a single false word, then let me be burned by heavenly fire, be struck by heavenly lightning, and die without a burial ground. As he spoke, he looked at Arbor with a fawning expression. I can write an oath to prove that I'm not lying. That old man of mine, miss, you don't have to say, I also hate him. He wasn't an upright person. When he arrived at the Divine Land, he took my little brother with him. I don't know where he went. From that day onwards, I no longer recognized him as my father. Speaking of which, I'm also wronged. My father has never loved me since I was young. Although I'm a member of the Yu family, no one in the Yu family cares about me. I no longer have anything to do with the Yu clan. The right and wrong of the Yu clan have nothing to do with me. UFA pointed to the sky and the earth. Everyone looked at each other, speechless. There were even people who couldn't help but snicker at UFA's cowardice. Actually, UFA wasn't lying. When he was in the middle 6 prefectures, he wasn't as capable as his 2 brothers. He spent the whole year roaming the red light district and made Ubadian lose face. Not to mention that UFA didn't treat the Yu family as his home, Ubadian didn't treat UFA as his son long ago. If it weren't for the fact that this second son had coincidentally hugged his thigh and escaped the Yu family with him, Ubatian wouldn't have cared about this good-for-nothing. He was simply a good-for-nothing. Chapter 2447. Therefore, Ufa and Ubatian probably didn't have a good father-son relationship. The rest of it was probably the matter of him cheating his father and son. The little girl definitely didn't expect that this person's desire to live was so strong that he was even willing to sign the oath. This meant that he really didn't hide anything from her. The Yu family definitely didn't have a good relationship with him. Otherwise, the oath really wasn't a joke. At this moment, she wanted to stomp her little foot down but didn't have the nerve to do so. She hesitated for a while in mid-air before retracting her foot and looking at Ufa expressionlessly. Since he said so, she had no reason to beat him up anymore, right? Looking at the little girl's regretful expression, Ufa's body shook for no reason. He hurriedly raised his hand over his head and swore, "Great aunt, every word I said is absolutely true." Even the entire Yu family was wiped out by Great Aunt. Tell me, how can I be so powerful and dare to find trouble with Great Aunt, right? Hearing this, the crowd was instantly in an uproar. Most of the people on the surrounding buildings and pleasure boats only saw the little girl's figure flash into the pleasure boat. Basically, they didn't see the little girl's face clearly. But just by listening to her voice, they knew that this girl was very young. Such a young girl could wipe out someone's entire family. Stop bragging, right? Although this Ufa looked like a bear, the scale of his family was probably not that big. But at any rate, it was a family. How could a little girl wipe out an entire family? They didn't believe it, they didn't believe it. This Ufa couldn't be the little girl's accomplice to make a name for himself, right? Everyone thought to themselves. If Arbor knew what these people were thinking, he would definitely roll his eyes at them. Make a name for himself? Who wants to make a name for himself in front of you bunch of weaklings? Accomplice my ass. Arbor glanced at Ufa and snorted. What a load of nonsense. None of it is useful. I'm only looking for your father. The others have nothing to do with me. What he meant was, I don't care about the lives of your family at all. Who has the time to take their lives? Ubatian colluded with Brother Go to harm her. Yu Hui released a high-level corpse puppet to scratch her and almost killed her Chuchio. He would not let any of them off. However, there was one thing that made her suspicious. She had always felt that the person behind Ubatian was not as simple as Brother Go. Brother Dog was a pawn of Jing Minyao of the Pangu clan in the Aurora Sand Land. There was no doubt about that. But Ubatian was a cunning and sordid man. Was a member of the Pangu clan really enough to drive him? When Qian Luo was plotting to take her life in the underground battle arena, what material benefits did the Yu clan obtain? Arbor's heart sank when he thought of the high-level zombie puppet. Outside Qian Luo's underground battle arena, the high-level corpse puppet that Yu Hui released should be at least at level 2. What did Yu Hui have to do with Tianyun? Or was the Yu clan related to Tianyun? The Yu clan was perhaps one of the Sky Fate Organization's strongholds in Shantian Prefecture. Therefore, the fact that Ubatian had returned to the Divine Land meant that the Heavenly Fate Organization should also have a stronghold in the Divine Land. However, no one knew where this stronghold was located. Arbor felt a chill run down his spine. Could it be that Tianyun was going to attack the Divine Land again? At that moment, Arbor seemed to have grasped something in his mind. Chapter 2448. Unfortunately, that spiritual light slipped by too quickly and disappeared again in a hurry. Arbor glanced coldly at Ufa. When she saw this man's cowardly appearance, she didn't feel like attacking him anymore. She retracted her foot and glared at him. Why aren't you writing? Ufa. He quickly took out a pen and paper from his inner world and wrote an oath. He even bit his finger without hesitation and pressed his thumbprint onto the paper. When Arbor saw his decisiveness, she had nothing to say. What should she say? She wouldn't get Eubation's whereabouts even if she interrogated this punk. She was very easy to talk to and would leave everything to fate. Just like right now, she simply didn't expect to find Eubation's son by coming to the Steamed Bun Festival to join in the fun. Who knew if Eubation would also come to the Steamed Bun Festival tomorrow to join in the fun? Jojo actually knew that this possibility was quite low. Miss Chiao expressionlessly turned around. Everyone was taken aback when they saw the little stoic's exquisite and beautiful face at first glance. But when they saw her stoic face, they couldn't help but twitch their mouths again and again. The little girl in front of him looked serious, but in fact, she was a black-hearted person. Look, look, look. It was as if the little fellow who beat someone up and almost couldn't pull him out of the window wasn't her at all. There was no need to mention how indifferent his expression was. Hey, wait. The owner of the pleasure boat was the beautiful woman. She couldn't help but walk forward and reach out to block the little girl's path. Miss, you didn't say anything and jumped on our boat. Look at this and that. You've smashed a hole in my boat. Do you still want me to do business? What do you think we should do? The crowd of onlookers couldn't help but secretly give this woman a thumbs up. The little lady looked like a savage, but she dared to go up and demand compensation. As expected, she was a formidable character. Arbor coldly stared at her for a long time, causing the woman's heart to pound uncontrollably. She suddenly asked, "How much?" "Ah. How much?" Arbor looked at the woman like she was looking at an idiot. Didn't she ask for compensation? He waited for her to make a bid but didn't say anything. If he wasn't an idiot, then what was? Why did it feel so tiring to talk to someone? 500 spirit coins. This woman originally wanted to shout out a sky-high price of 5,000 spirit coins or something to make this stoic-faced little girl bleed. However, the moment he opened his mouth, he saw the little girl's dark and bottomless eyes looking at him. He couldn't help but twist his tongue and shout out a real price. Arbor nodded and took out a small pouch from his inner world. The woman's complexion instantly turned for the better, and she reached out to accept it with a smile. However, Xiao Mu retracted her hand and opened the bag herself. She counted out the money one by one, and after counting up to 500 spirit coins, she closed the bag tightly. The woman was speechless. You even fucking counted them one by one. Why don't you go to heaven and pinch them? This little girl didn't seem like someone who lacked money. Who would have thought that she would be so stingy? After the little fellow finished counting the money, he threw the cloth bag into his inner world and turned around to fly back to his ship. She looked up and happened to see the large ship with the Qin Estates emblem. On the third deck of the ship, the white-clothed youth who had previously treated her like a rag was staring at her without blinking. What was he looking at? When Miss Chiao thought of the Omega Kotoku, she felt sick of it and didn't have a good impression of the people from the Qin estate. Chapter 2449. Especially this youth, who kept looking at her with a disdainful gaze just now. He was simply crazy. Arbor didn't like him in her heart, and her stoic face became even more expressionless. She lifted her eyelids and swept a glance over before looking away. Little miss, you didn't lose out on this 500 spirit coins. The woman was still grumbling over there, but Arbor already couldn't be bothered to listen to her. She flew away from Miss Meng's pleasure boat and jumped straight back to her own official boat. She had just steadied herself when Emo Yen walked onto the deck, followed by the serious-looking Fang Su, who was holding food, and the ever-smiling eunuch Hu and his entourage. Everyone was holding a steaming hot dish in their hands, and the aroma wafted over. Arbor immediately ran over with quick steps, and her eyes lit up as she exclaimed, "Eat." Emo Yen was secretly amused. She walked up and reached out to grab her little hand. What were you doing outside just now? What did I do? I didn't do anything. The little fellow pulled him to sit down at the table and blinked with an "I'm especially obedient" expression. Then what did Fong Su say? Did you run over to the opposite boat to cause trouble? Fong Su, Your Highness, is it good for you to cheat your subordinate like this? Is there a master who would sell out his subordinate without a second word like you? Arbor cast a glance at Fong Su, and the latter instantly felt chilly and sinister gusts of wind. He kept feeling a sense of dread rising in his heart. He wouldn't be unlucky, right? I saw an acquaintance, so I went over to say hello. It didn't take long either. It's delicious. Arbor took the fish soup that he scooped for her and drank half a bowl. She felt warm all over and the taste was extremely good. She hurriedly handed the bowl over to him for another bowl. The corner of Fong Su's mouth silently twitched. Half a quarter of an hour ago, he came up to the deck to take a look. At that time, the Crown Princess was clearly on the opposite deck, and she beat up an unlucky man. The Crown Princess's way of greeting was really special. Fong Su wanted to chuckle, but when he saw the little girl's eyes staring at him, he didn't know why, but he couldn't bring himself to laugh. Look at how terrified he was. A big man like him was defeated in front of a little girl. It's Yu Baishan's second son. He's such a coward. Arbor snorted. I can't be bothered to lower myself to his level. Fong Su said in his heart, if you had the same level of knowledge as other people, would that unlucky fellow still be alive? Is the Qin Estate's ship next to us? The Crown Prince reached out to hold her small hand as he asked in a soft voice. Arbor nodded. Ignore him. Arbor nodded again. Of course, she wouldn't bother with them for no reason. She still didn't want to see Omega Kotoku. Early the next morning, Xiao Mu was woken up by the clamorous laughter in the corridor outside. Moving his little arm, the little fellow opened his eyes and saw his husband's handsome features right in front of him. He immediately felt that his beautiful day had begun. Have you seen enough yet? Mo Lien opened his eyes with a grin. Because he had just woken up, his voice was still a bit gloomy and hoarse. Not enough. The little girl shook her head vigorously, causing the man to laugh in a low voice. By the time the two of them started to dawdle, an hour had already passed. After washing up, Arbor pulled his hand and walked towards the deck of the ship. Let's go and see the results of last night. Mo Lien raised his brows slightly. Results? Arbor nodded her small head. That's right. I threw a lot of beads into the river last night. Chapter 2450. If there are no accidents. Today's harvest would definitely be bountiful. The little girl's eyes lit up. Mo Lien held her little hand and smiled as they walked to the deck together. He said in a low voice, yesterday, that kid from the Yu family didn't stay here. He ran away with his tail between his legs. Arbor nodded. Don't bother about him. He's just an unloved fellow. He's completely useless. Thinking about how she had to compensate him with 500 spirit coins last night, Miss Chiao couldn't help but feel her teeth ache. If not for the fact that she was in the wrong last night, let's see if she would compensate him. Mo Lien looked down at her lively little expression and couldn't help but chuckle. He leaned in and kissed her ear. Jojo, your little expression is very interesting. Arbor was expressionless. She looked up at Prince Mo and snorted softly at him. As they spoke, a commotion could be heard from the deck of the ship outside. When Arbor walked up to her deck, she realized that the ship opposite her was already filled with people. At this moment, he was pointing at the river and shouting excitedly, "Wow, I see a school of fish so early in the morning. This is really a good sign. Who knows, maybe we can get first place in this steamed bun festival. Hey, little brother over there, wake up. Can you not talk in your sleep in broad daylight? Get first place. It'll be good enough if you can get into the top 10. Why are there so many fish circling around here and not leaving? Arbor thought that of course they wouldn't leave. She didn't throw in so many pearls and bracelets that smelled of medicine last night for nothing. Jojo? Mo Lien's eyes brightened. He looked at his little wife and whispered into her ear, "These ingredients are quite fresh. Bring them back to Fish Orchid Planet in batches to raise them." She just felt that there were too few fish in the waters of Fish Orchid Planet. Her Lien indeed understood her intentions. He knew what she was going to do after she made a fuss. Cough. Miss Chiao expressionlessly took out a storage talisman and swiftly threw it into the air. The talisman's energy expanded, and the school of fish in the river was sucked into the talisman. Needless to say, this scene was truly stunning. The people on the nearby boats all gasped and asked in a trembling voice, "What is she doing?" "Collecting fish, oh my God. Wasn't this too excessive?" Looking at the fishes entering the storage talisman like a string of beads, everyone almost forgot how to speak in that instant. The visual effect was too shocking. "I have a storage talisman with me. Mother, looking at this situation, this storage talisman isn't a blue talisman, right? I also want to buy a storage talisman, but it's a pity that it can't even be sold on the black market. Damn it." While everyone was prattling on and on, Xiao Mu had already collected all the fish that had gathered here into her storage talisman without batting an eyelid or skipping a beat in her heart. At this moment, everyone saw clearly. This little girl who had taken out a storage talisman and openly collected such a large school of fish was the little fellow who had jumped onto Miss Meng's boat to beat her up last night. Last night, the sky was dark and hazy, so it wasn't very clear. Today, under the rising sun and separated by the surging river, the sky was blue and the waves were blue. Oh my God, this little girl's face was a little too beautiful. The plain-clothed man beside her was also a rare handsome man in the divine continent. Chapter 2451. That's too fucking shameless. How could this little girl be so shameless as to take in such a large school of fish all by herself? Ow, ow. They were envious and jealous. She could have shared some with them. Not to mention the onlookers on the pleasure boat, even the boatmen on the boat were so envious that their eyes turned red. Heavens, there were so many fish. Those who relied on fishing for a living had probably never seen such a large shoal of fish swimming around the river in their entire lives. What was even more pitiful was that those who had secretly caught 2 or 3 fish on the boat and were still happy, turned around and saw that so many fish had been taken away by others with great generosity. With this comparison, it was definitely a critical hit of 10,000 points. They were heartbroken. To think that they had been so smug earlier. They had brought their own fishing gear and caught a few fish, but in the blink of an eye, someone else had taken all the fish. The boatmen stopped rowing and fought to be the first to snatch a few fish at the last moment. However, the little girl's movements were extremely fast, and in a flash, she had collected all the fish in the area. "We can still take in another wave at night," the little girl said to Mo Lien as her eyes curved. This was why she had not directly scattered the powder last night, but had stuffed the powder into a bead and thrown it into the water. According to her calculations, she would be able to take in another wave at night and another wave the next morning. After that, the powder would basically disperse. If she directly scattered the powder, she would only be able to take in 1 wave. It was not worth it. She hoped that there would be a school of fish in her orchid sea, big and small. Just thinking about it made her want to eat. Later, she would ask Lien to make Jojo fried, steamed, and stir-fried everything. Everyone stared at the little girl as she beat her chest and stomped her feet. Then, the little girl pulled the man beside her and turned to walk back into the cabin. When they returned to the cabin for breakfast, Arbor took the time to return to Fish Orchid Planet and release the school of fish from the storage talisman into the sea. Looking at the colorful fish jumping around in the water and swimming in all directions, Miss Chiao felt a sense of accomplishment. Regardless of whether it was a fish in a river or in the sea, she would be able to raise them all on her Fish Orchid Planet. Her orchid sea was rich in spiritual chi, and it was not comparable to the ordinary sea areas outside. Arbor couldn't help but feel happy when he thought about how he would be able to eat fish slices and porridge in the future, which were all good things with spiritual energy and could even nourish his body. The two of them quickly finished their breakfast and turned around to walk towards the entrance of the corridor, hand in hand. At this time, many people had already gathered at the entrance. Most of them were spectators, but there were also some who were here to participate in the competition. Every participant had a red headscarf tied around their heads, making them easy to recognize. This year's champion is the ghost grass. No wonder there are so many more people signing up this year. The ghost grass's medicinal properties are overbearing, it's used to cure all sorts of negative states. I heard that if it's made into a ghost plant pill, one will be immune to all kinds of status talismans used by talisman masters during battle. It's effective for up to half an hour. It's really amazing. No wonder it's so popular. The problem is that if a low-level pill master were to make this kind of herb that's close to the divine level, it would be a waste of God's gift. Hey, look, that kid is here. Damn, isn't that Wang Yan, last year's second place? He still dares to come. Our Weishi branch manager has already announced that he's disqualified from the competition. Chapter 2452. Arbor looked over curiously and saw the young man named Wang Yan who was being pointed at. He looked to be around 27 or 28 years old. He had an ordinary face, but his eyes were exceptionally sharp. Wang Yan, why are you here? A busybody laughed and mocked. The president of the Weishi Pill Guild has already given the order to not allow you to participate in the Mantu festival. What's wrong with you? You don't take the president's words seriously. The crowd burst into laughter. Who knows, maybe Wang Yan is still thinking of getting first place. After all, he was only half a step away from getting first place last year. That's right, last year's winner ate 818 mantus, while Wang Yan ate 799. Ha ha ha. But last year's champion died the next day after he went back. That's right. I told him not to work so hard, but he didn't listen to me. Wang Yan, last year your digestion pills were only a third of his. That's why you lost, right? Did you prepare enough digestion pills this year? Hey, aren't you joking? I already said that he doesn't have the right to participate. That's right. After all, the biggest supporter of the Mantu festival is our Weishi Pill Guild. If not for the Weishi Pill Guild providing money in herbs every year, how could the Mantu festival be held so smoothly for so many years? This was equivalent to the Weishi Pill Guild sponsoring an event to gain popularity. To put it bluntly, this amount of resources was nothing to the Weishi Pill Guild. While the crowd was talking, they were gloating over Wang Yan's misfortune and looked at him with evil intentions. However, this young man was as calm as an old monk. His face did not show any expression as he walked towards the competition venue amidst the crowd's mocking laughter. Pill Master, he is here. Pill Master, he. Someone called out and the crowd burst into an uproar again. This time, it was different from the mocking and ridiculing of Wang Yan. When the crowd saw the young, handsome, and elegant Pill Master, they all flattered him and laughed. Pill Master, he is also participating in this event this time. Ah, the warrior behind Pill Master, he looks so strong. He can definitely eat 30 mantus in one go. This year's first place will definitely be Pill Master, he. Arbor. Don't you guys have any shame? She didn't come here to watch them flatter each other and talk nonsense. The little girl pulled a long face and snapped at the referees. Are we still going to compete or not? What a load of nonsense. It's almost time for lunch. It was really annoying to dawdle about doing something. Everyone was speechless. However, the little girl was mixed in with the crowd. When everyone turned around, not everyone could see her. A middle-aged man, who was in charge of hosting the steamed bun festival, cleared his throat and said, "All right, I believe everyone can't wait any longer. Our steamed bun festival has officially begun. We'll split it into 2 projects. Today is a man-to-eating contest. I'm sure everyone knows the rules, so I won't go into detail. In short, within the time limit, every bun you eat will add 1 point, and every pill you eat in the bun will add 100 points. The second event tomorrow is the steamed bun wrapping competition. The requirement this time is that the pill in the bun must be a detoxification pill. When the time comes, we will be responsible for giving out 30 or so people with various symptoms of poisoning. If we save 1 person, we will add 10 points. The person with the highest score in the 2 events will win. Chapter 24:53. The little girl was speechless. She felt that this competition was a joke. If it was a pill competition, then it was a pill competition. Why did you have to make people eat steamed buns? Furthermore, they had to eat so many steamed buns. Last year, someone even died from eating them. Could it be that if the pill was not eaten in the steamed buns, it would lose its effect? That can't be right. Is there a second event this year? I feel that this competition is getting more and more complicated. Yes. I remember that 5 or 6 years ago, it was just a simple steamed bun eating competition. It was jointly organized by a few rich families in the city to help the poor. The prize for the first place was 5,000 spirit coins. Yes, I remember that too. At most, they would put some chili oil in the steamed buns to make the young lads cry out in pain. Things have changed with the passage of time. Ever since the people from Wuxia branch took over this event, it has become more and more lively. It is also more inclined towards the pill competition. That's right. The prize for the first place at Wuxia branch is 50,000. It is 10 times the amount, and there are also precious herbs as rewards. How can the pill refiners not scramble for it? Let me tell you, this is the cleverness of Wuxia branch. By organizing this event, they can also attract a group of skilled pill refiners. Most of the people who were invited would go along with the flow and join the pill house. Who would be like Wang Yan, who did not know how to appreciate favors and was blacklisted by the pill house in the end? Furthermore, those rich pill refiners do not need to participate in the competition themselves. For example, Pill Master, he just found a silly big guy to compete with. He only needed to provide good quality digestion pills at the end so that the big guy could stand until the end. The pill refiner who won the first place last year must have a hole in his head to compete. In the end, he killed himself. I feel that the pill refiner did not have a hole in his head. He was just too overconfident. Ha 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 ha. Everyone laughed. The competition started amidst the lively chatter and laughter. Under the protection of Fang Su and the rest, Miss Xiao pulled Prince Mo to the front of the crowd to watch this unique event. There were more than 100 people participating in the competition. They were divided into more than 10 groups. Each group had a hard-working judge who held a book and was responsible for keeping track of everyone's numbers. Miss Xiao couldn't help but feel that this was really a bunch of idiots doing stupid things. Suddenly, a chubby young man raised his right hand excitedly while spitting out bread crumbs. Dan! Medicinal pills! Medicinal pills! Pills! Fuck, someone ate a medicinal pill right from the start. The middle-aged man hosting the competition revealed a sweet smile. In this competition, pills aren't the only thing. Every time you eat a medicinal pill, you'll get an additional 100 points. Everyone, do your best. As soon as he said that, the group of people who were eating the steamed buns seemed to have gone crazy. They rushed into the pile of steamed buns, grabbed one in each hand, and crazily stuffed them into their mouths. The referee at the side had to keep an eye on the 10 contestants, so he could only run around and shout excitedly, "This contestant number 3 is already eating his 18th steamed bun." Contestant 19 was even more impressive. He was already stuffing the 20-second steamed bun. Oh. Oh my God, everyone, look. This contestant number 16 is about to die. He's starting to eat digestive pills. Miss Chiao was speechless. Mo Lien could not help but laugh. Miss Chiao watched the farce in front of her and the corners of her mouth curled up. Finally, she could not help but laugh out loud. Chapter 2454. This group of jokers was too hilarious. Watching them climb up the 3-meter-tall mountain of steamed buns and fight to be the first to stuff the buns into their mouths, Miss Chiao couldn't help but want to laugh. Too hilarious, this competition. Little did she know that the Crown Prince was all smiles as he lowered his head to look at her, laughing to her heart's content, his eyes rippling with a faint smile. Who came up with this competition? Prince Mo pretended to ask casually. Fong Su bowed at the side and said, "It's the manager of the Weishi branch of the Pill House, right? I heard that his surname is Wang. He's a pretty good talent." Mo Lien nodded with an indifferent expression, but the smile in his eyes couldn't be concealed. He reached out to hold the little girl's small hand and looked at her, laughing heartily. His heart was filled with joy. Look, his Jojo was laughing so happily. Wasn't this just a talent? He even made his wife laugh so much. Fong Su's mouth twitched fiercely. Was His Highness praising Manager Wang? Wasn't that right? Wasn't that right? He couldn't be wrong. Manager Wang was such a joker. Calling him a talent? Forget it. Fong Su was a middle-aged single dog. He was completely unable to understand the Crown Prince's joy at this moment. The Crown Prince was rather happy at this moment. There was no other reason. His wife was happy. His wife was smiling. He was naturally very happy. His little wife was usually very cold. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that the number of times she smiled could be counted with one's fingers. It was rare to see her smile like this. It was really too adorable. The Crown Prince's heart was brimming with love. He reached out to hold his wife's small waist and very considerately reached out to gently stroke her back to help her breathe. Then, he raised his hand to point at the mountain of steamed buns and shouted, "Jojo, Jojo, look at that person. He's rolling down from the mountain of steamed buns. Jojo, Jojo, look. That guy is eating steamed buns left and right until he's vomiting. He's even vomiting on someone else's head. Does he still want to recover?" Ha 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 ha. Miss Chiao felt that it would have been better if the Crown Prince didn't explain. Once he did, she wanted to laugh even more. It was too funny. This messy situation in front of them. Words like these attracted the attention of the surrounding people to the man who was gloating. Even if we were laughing at those fools in our hearts, we wouldn't dare to say it out loud. Fong Su's face was taut, and his solemn expression suddenly cracked a little. "Crown Prince, can you not be so eye-catching?" Prince Mo couldn't be bothered with other people's gazes. He only glanced at his wife in his arms. He felt that when the little fellow smiled, the entire winter day became brighter, sweeping away the heavy atmosphere from before. Although the surroundings were withered, it was inexplicably gorgeous, like a mountain flower. His Jojo was happy. That was great. Clang! A man with a bronze hammer struck the gong. The middle-aged host's fast-paced voice rang out, "Good, good, good. Rest for 3 minutes. If you don't have enough digestive pills, you can go to the site to buy some." Wretch, the sound of vomiting drowned out the host's voice. Everyone was speechless. "Don't fucking throw up here. If you vomit like this, who will be able to eat later, you clown? Hurry up and take them away, take them away." After a round of commotion, the 2 vomiting youths were carried away. Miss Chiao laughed heartily. The surrounding crowd also couldn't help but laugh wildly. Every time there was a steamed bun festival, they always felt like their lives were going to be shortened. They felt like they were going to die from laughter. Chapter 24:55. Pill Master. He rushed forward as if he was flying. He even brought 3 or 4 people with him to form a small team. At this moment, he helped the burly man who was retching to the side. One handed him a face towel, another used professional techniques to massage his stomach, and another took out 2 digestive pills from a bottle and gave them to the burly man. Come, swallow it. Swallow him. How do you feel, how do you feel? Do your best. Do your best. Stay in first place, you can do it. Pill Master. He cheered the burly man on, his nervous expression showing through his words. Damn, just for a piece of ghost grass. Miss Xiao turned around and buried her head in the Crown Prince's embrace. She tugged at his clothes and laughed until her entire body twitched. The Crown Prince smiled and rubbed the back of her head. Jojo, let's stay for one more day. We'll leave after watching the second event tomorrow. He had a premonition that tomorrow's steamed bun wrapping competition would definitely be filled with amusing people. It would definitely make Jojo laugh. Fong Su's mouth twitched. Why did they have to stay for one more night? Digestive pills. Who has digestive pills? I want to buy them. A loud shout was heard. Following that was a mocking laughter. Hey, Wang Yan, your companion's expression seems to be very ugly. Don't tell me he's going to explode from overeating. TSK, the moment you participate in the competition, you'll be in second place forever. You can't change that, can you? Shut up. Wang Yan coldly glared at the man. He then looked at the surrounding crowd. Everyone. Is there anyone selling digestive pills? I'll buy them all. Digestive pills were not rare pills. Immediately, 2 or 3 people raised their hands and offered to sell them. However, the price was very high. This digestive pill was only a middle-grade pill. In the middle 6 prefectures, it was at most 5,000 spirit coins for one pill. However, in the Divine Continent, where everything was expensive, and under this kind of competition atmosphere, people would naturally raise the price. No one was a fool. Who wouldn't want to earn this kind of quick money? In any case, every time before the Steamed Bun Festival, many people would head to the pill house 3 months in advance to stock up on digestive pills. However, the digestive pill was indeed a hot commodity. Sometimes, even if one went to all the pill shops in Weishi City, one might not even be able to buy a few digestive pills. Those with good business acumen had already stocked up at home, waiting to make a big profit today. 20,000 spirit coins for one. The bidder stretched out 2 fingers. Wang Yan's face instantly turned ugly. 20,000 spirit coins was indeed too expensive. He would have to support himself for a long time. At the very least, he would need to stock up on 5 digestive pills. That would cost him 100,000 spirit coins. You can also give me spirit stones. 20 spirit stones. Aren't you going to rob them? Someone shouted indignantly. Even a fool knew that spirit stones were precious. 20 spirit stones were far more valuable than 20,000 spirit coins. Who would use spirit stones to exchange for a middle-grade medicinal pill like the digestive pill? There's no need to snatch it. This is the price of my digestion pills. Buy it or leave it. Wang Yan sighed and reached out to support his friend. Brother Gu, I think we should just forget about this competition. The price of the digestive pill had been soaring every year. This year's price was so expensive that it made people lose all desire to buy it. There was no other way. Because of the high demand for the digestive pill, the herbs used to make it were all snatched up in the surrounding forests. Now, there was a serious shortage in the market. Chapter 24:56. With the lack of ingredients, it was naturally impossible to make more digestive pills. As a result, the price of the digestive pills rose rapidly every year. This year's supply of ingredients could no longer keep up with the demand for digestive pills. A young man beside Wang Yan suddenly cried out in fear, "Gudapeng, Gudapeng." Wang Yan looked down and saw that the man beside him had his eyes tightly shut. His face was pale and his body was trembling slightly. He ate too much. He must take the digestive pill immediately. Wang Yan was shocked and hurriedly shouted to the person who offered the highest price, "I'll buy one." Unexpectedly, that person shrugged and said, "I'm sorry, the price is different from before. It's 30,000 for one pill." Wang Yan's expression became more and more unsightly. He looked at the other people who wanted to sell the digestive pills. Unexpectedly, those people had discussed beforehand and would only raise the price instead of lowering the price. Thus, Wang Yan was in a tragic situation. "Friend, I only have 20,000 spirit coins on me. How about this, I'll give you 20,000 spirit coins first and later. Don't talk about later. We're not that close. Who knows if you'll run away in the middle of the transaction? Who will take the rest of the money from me?" Wang Yan's face was filled with anger as he clenched his fists tightly. However, Gudapeng's life was in danger and he could only lower his head and admit defeat. "Little Chow, let's pool together the spirit coins we have and buy a digestive pill for your brother Gu. Hey! Come buy it from me." At this moment, a crisp voice interrupted the crowd's sighs. Wang Yan turned around and saw a porcelain doll with exquisite features waving its little hand at him. For a moment, he couldn't help but feel excited. Wang Yan walked forward and asked, "Miss, you also have digestive pills?" "Yes." Of course, Arbor wouldn't tell him about the ultimate pills like the digestive pill. She had used them when she was still in the early stages of refining pills to train her proficiency in refining pills. Now, the middle-grade pills in her inner world were piled up in a corner like a small mountain. They weren't of much use. Now that her alchemy skills had risen, things like middle-rank medicinal pills were simply not of any use to her. I don't know the price. 10,000. The little girl stretched out her little finger. 10,000 spirit coins for one. Wang Yan hurriedly nodded, "Thank you, miss, thank you. I'll take it." The little girl nodded and casually took out a handful of digestive pills from her inner world. She casually spread them out in her palm, even skipping the bottle. "How many do you want?" "Yes, I want 2, no, 3, I want 3. It was so cheap that Wang Yan was so excited that his face turned red. He hurriedly turned to his companion and said, "Little Chow, let's pool our money together and buy 3 digestive pills for your brother Gu." "All right." Little Chow had no objections and just nodded. The onlookers were no longer calm. Especially those who had seen the little girl collect so many fish with the storage talisman in the morning, they couldn't help but make a fuss. Where did this girl come from? Not only does he have a rare item like the storage talisman, but he also has a handful of digestive pills. That's right. She didn't even blink when she took out the digestive pills. Arbor took the 30,000 spirit coins and gave Wang Yan 3 pills. Chapter 2457. Following that, Arbor raised his head and looked at the surrounding people who were eyeing him covetously. He raised his hand and asked, "Is there anyone else who wants to buy?" 12,000 for one pill. 12,000 was also cheap, so an alchemist immediately walked over, wanting to buy the pills in her hand. In less than 5 minutes, Miss Chiao's stockpile of over 200 digestive pills was sold out. The surrounding people had long been petrified, and they all looked at the little girl in front of them as if they were looking at a monster. "Miss, you've been stockpiling since 3 years ago, right?" An old man at the side seemed to have discovered the truth and said with a rueful expression. "How far-sighted. During the Manta Festival 3 years ago, digestive pills weren't so popular. If he had started hoarding digestion pills at that time, he would have more than 200 of them by now. Arbor was speechless. She couldn't be bothered to talk to him. Who started stockpiling these worthless things 3 years ago? When she was a mid-grade alchemist, she used a small stew pot to practice her skills every day. After putting away the 2.5 million spirit coins, Miss Chiao raised her head to look at the grinning Mo Lien, and her eyes curved slightly. Eat. Okay. Then we'll go back. Mo Lien's smile widened. Holding the little fellow's hand, the two of them turned and were about to leave when they saw a group of people walking over from the entrance of the corridor. The white-clothed youth in the lead was looking at Arbor with his cold eyes. When he saw Arbor's appearance clearly, a trace of indifference flashed through his eyes. Miss Chiao was expressionless, having already recognized that person from the Qin estate. However, the two of them had never met before, and there was no need for them to meet now. Ling Gu jogged along beside her young master. Following her young master's gaze, she also couldn't help but look up at Arbor. He was a little stunned by the little girl's beauty, but that was all. Thinking of how his young master hated women, he hurriedly followed a few more steps. Suddenly, a soft and pleasantly surprised voice was heard. "Fifth brother." A young girl dressed in pink ran out from the crowd. Her small face was filled with shyness as she looked at the white-clothed youth. Like a butterfly flying through flowers, she ran in front of the Qin estate's fifth young master. Fifth young master Qin's aloof expression fiercely changed, and his handsome face instantly seemed to distort. He hastily retreated a step, and his eyes revealed a trace of ruthlessness and fury. "Kill her. Arbor." These words sounded very familiar, but they made her feel very unhappy. Behind the fifth young master, a black shadow immediately leaped out. Like a killing machine, it stretched out its big hands like iron pincers and twisted the pink-dressed girl's slender neck. The pink-clothed young girl looked at fifth young master Qin in bewilderment. She wanted to struggle, but her hands were powerlessly hanging down. Her eyes were filled with fear, as if she had not expected that her devotion to him would be exchanged for such an outcome. Seeing that the young girl was about to lose her life on the spot, another calm woman's voice was heard from outside the crowd. "Please stop." A woman with a long face and fair complexion squeezed out from the crowd leisurely in her long skirt and calmly stood 10 steps away from the fifth young master. This woman was extremely beautiful, with almond-shaped eyes and rosy cheeks, and her entire body exuded a trace of calm and dignified aura. She wore a light yellow gauze skirt with gold silk, and her hair was simply coiled into a young girl's bun. She only used an extremely precious jasper hairpin to hold her hair in place. She looked simple yet generous, and she carried a good complexion. Chapter 2458. The young girl was only 16 or 17 years old. She looked worriedly at the pink-clothed young girl whose neck was being grabbed and hastily said, "Fifth young master, please forgive her. My younger sister is insensible. Please let her off this time. In the future, she definitely won't dare to be so impudent in front of you, fifth young master." Fifth young master Qin glanced coldly at that girl. "You are the Mu family's eldest Miss, Mu Rochuan." This was an affirmative sentence. Evidently, the fifth young master also knew this Miss Mu Rochuan. It was just that knowing him was one thing, and giving him face was another matter altogether. Everyone was from the capital's great family clans, and they would more or less meet a few times at palace banquets or prestigious gatherings. Rather, it was Arbor who glanced at those two girls when he heard the words, "Mu family," and turned his head away with a light snort. "Yes, the one you want to kill is my younger sister, Mu Ruyan," Mu Rochuan said neither humbly nor overbearingly. These words clearly pointed out Mu Ruyan's identity and left the Qin family's fifth son to consider it himself. Kill. Just wait to become enemies with the entire Mu family. If he didn't kill her, then they could still be friends when they met again. Moreover, this matter was originally an extremely small matter, so fifth young Master Qin was clearly making a mountain out of a molehill. Of course, if it weren't for her family clan, Mu Roxuan simply wouldn't care about her love-struck concubine sister. She rushed up to curry favor like a fool and ended up getting slapped in the face by the man in front of everyone. Ha, a concubine's daughter who couldn't be brought to the table was just a fool. Mu Ruyan was extremely aggrieved at this time. Of course, she knew fifth young Master Qin. In her impression, it was still at that flower banquet hosted by the Madam of the National Security Agency 3 months ago. At that time, fifth young Master Qin was as handsome as a banished immortal, and his superb zither skills were astonishing. He was refined, courteous, cultured, and refined, and she had also met him once at that time. Moreover, he even smiled politely at her at that time. Who knew that when they met again, it would be like this? He actually personally said that he wanted to kill her. Mu Ruyan felt that her heart had already shattered into dregs at this moment. The hair festival competition was still ongoing, but a small portion of people's gazes were currently attracted by these handsome men and beautiful women. Many people looked curiously in fifth young Master Qin's direction. Arbor, Mo Yen, and the others were blocked by Qin Wu's group at the entrance, so they couldn't walk over for the time being. Thus, they stood to the side and watched the show with indifferent expressions. Miss Chiao was screaming in her heart, hit, 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 hit. Mo Yen couldn't help but want to laugh. She lowered her head and whispered in her ear, "Are you trying to stir up trouble?" Sir Jojo was expressionless. He lifted his chin slightly to show him his stoic face, indicating that he did not have such thoughts. What a little cutie. Let's hurry back to the boat and kiss her. Prince Mo's eyes flashed as he grabbed Jojo's hand and took 2 steps forward. Fifth young Master Qin suddenly sneered. So what if she's from the Mu family? So be it. Ah, cough, cough. Mu Ruyan cried in grief and indignation. She really couldn't understand why the gentle and refined fifth young master had changed so much. Wait. Faint anxiety flitted across Mu Roxian's face. She wasn't worried that her stepsister would be killed by the Qin family. Instead, she was worried that her stepsister's death would be unclear and that she would be reprimanded by her father when she returned. After all, this Mu Ruyan was considered her father's treasure. Fifth young master, please calm your anger. It's my sister who is insensible. Please let her go. The Mu family is willing to compensate. Chapter 2459. Fifth Qin gazed coldly at Mu Roxian. What if this young master doesn't agree? Not everyone has to give face to your Mu family. Arbor cheered inwardly, looking like she was watching a show. Hurry up and fight. So much nonsense. She remembered that Master had told her that one had to be fast in taking the initiative to subdue the enemy. Talking too much nonsense definitely wouldn't lead to a good outcome. If one still wasted words on whether to kill or not, then it was very likely that the enemy would counterattack. She had always kept these words in mind and didn't dare to forget their origins. But now, both sides had been in a deadlock for almost half an incense stick's worth of time without any movement. Arbor rolled her eyes and stealthily tugged at the Crown Prince's sleeve. The Crown Prince lowered his head to glance at her and patted her small head. You find it annoying? Then let's go. Presumably, there wasn't much to see in this liveliness. Arbor thought so too. Rather than wasting time here and watching them dawdle about whether to fight or not, they might as well return to the ship to rest. Prince Mo signaled with his eyes, and Fang Su led his men in the direction of the 5 young masters, saying along the way, make way, make way. Right at this time, Mu Ruyan suddenly made her move. Her movements were extremely fast as a shadow flashing by. She had already arrived in front of that hidden guard from the Qin estate and flung an attack talisman over at extreme speed. However, that hidden guard from the Qin estate wasn't an ordinary person. He didn't even bat an eyelid when he saw the attack talisman approaching, nor was he too shocked. A spirit saber abruptly jumped out of his conscious and cut off the attack talisman's power with a whoosh. Mu Ro Yen knew that this fellow before her wasn't so easy to deal with. At the same time that she flung out the attack talisman, she had already summoned her contracted spiritual beast, the heavenly cyan spirit fire python. The python suddenly occupied a large space at the entrance of the corridor, scaring all the onlookers into running into the corridor. In this way, they would truly occupy the entrance. Seeing that they had really started fighting, Arbor wasn't in a hurry to pull Mo Lien back to the ship. She also wanted to see how strong this Mu family's eldest miss was. From the looks of it, her talisman crafting level had probably entered the yellow level. She should be 16 years old this year. From the perspective of a normal person, for her to step into the ranks of a yellow-level symbol master at the age of 16, she was absolutely a genius among geniuses. She was fully deserving of the title of the Mu clan's genius eldest young miss. Her outstanding elder brother, Mu Xingchen, might not have been as good as her when he was 16 years old. But that was because there was no comparison. If there was no comparison, then there would be no harm. Most people in the Mu family did not know of the existence of Arbor, so in their eyes, the eldest daughter of the Mu family, Mu Roxuan, was definitely at the peak of the younger generation of the Mu family. But now, Arbor was back. Arbor set foot on the land of Divine Land. Arbor's appearance would immediately break the record of being the youngest black-level symbol master in the history of the Mu family. Bang! Mu Roxuan's 2 fireballs were blocked by the Qin Estate's secret guards. The Qin Estate's secret guards didn't summon their contracted spiritual beasts, so everyone understood. This was definitely because the eldest daughter of the Mu family's heavenly cyan spirit fire python was more powerful than his contracted spiritual beast. If he summoned it, it would be instantly killed by the python. Perhaps he would even suffer a backlash from his contracted spiritual beast being injured. But because of this, the secret guard quickly fell into a disadvantageous position against 2 opponents. However, the secret guard didn't reveal any anxious or fearful expression. Instead, he calmly took out a bottle of medicinal pills from his pocket and swallowed one. Chapter 2460. Soon, his undulating spiritual energy surged, and his speed became crazily fast. The spirit saber in his hand was covered in a layer of frightening earth spiritual power. As the saber slashed down, everyone felt the corridor's entrance shake. The stone bricks on the ground were also lifted up and smashed towards Mu Roxian's face like a dragon. Mu Roxian gritted her teeth, but her hand speed was still very fast. Taking advantage of the celestial azure spirit fire python's entanglement with the Qin Estate's hidden guard, she pulled that eyesore of a concubine's sister over and ruthlessly pushed her back without any mercy. Mu Ro Yen was pushed to the ground and fell in a sorry state. After being frightened like this, she didn't care about her face and immediately burst into tears. Mu Roxian frowned and felt a wave of irritation in her heart. She already knew that this concubine's sister didn't do things properly and didn't have any brains, but she really didn't expect that she would be able to make her lose face in public. If it wasn't for her father's order for her to bring this concubine's sister to Weishi City to handle some matters, she definitely wouldn't have brought her along. She was annoyed just by looking at her. She was only a year younger than her and was already an adult of marriageable age, but she still acted like a child. Of all the people she could provoke, she chose to provoke the Qin Estate. The Qin Estate was the family that her Mu family didn't want to become enemies with the most. If she offended the Qin Estate, who knew if they would cut off their supply of pills in the future? At that time, Mu Ro Yan's sin would be great. Therefore, although Mu Roxian was anxious to save this brainless concubine sister, she didn't dare to kill that hidden guard. Now that the other person had taken the pills and his spiritual power was surging, she was restrained and almost swept away by the other party's spiritual power several times. Her complexion slowly became unsightly. She didn't want to become enemies with the Qin estate, but that didn't mean that she, the Mu family's eldest miss, was afraid of them. Mu Xian clenched her teeth and took out several defensive talismans from her sleeves. They revolved around her body and released defensive power at the same time. At the same time, 4 to 5 offensive talismans and body-securing talismans were thrown over, breaking apart the other party's body. The Qin estate's hidden guard's figure clearly paused for a moment. Mu Roxuan took advantage of this opening and untied the gauze feather immortal silk from her waist. Without another word, she slapped it towards the Qin estate's hidden guard's face. The shadow guard's face was instantly hit. Pa! His face was slapped red from the Luo Yu immortal silk spiritual power. The fifth young master stared coldly at Mu Roxuan. Mu Roxuan scolded, "Are you still not going to stop?" She didn't want to offend the Qin estate too much, but she also didn't want to ruin the Mu family's prestige when she was outside. Moreover, her cerulean spirit fire python had been covetously watching from the side. To be honest, it had not launched a fierce attack at all. Because the walkway was built on the river, she couldn't possibly destroy the walkway here and incur the wrath of the crowd. The Mu family would definitely not take the blame. Arbor looked at Mu Roxuan and snorted. She does have some brains. Unlike that fool who had collapsed on the ground and bawled loudly. Although she had been helped up by the Mu family's maidservant, there were still aggrieved teardrops hanging from the corners of her eyes. It was as if the Qin estate's fifth young master had wronged her. No wonder fifth Qin's complexion was becoming increasingly unsightly. Mu Roxuan cupped her fists and said, "Fifth young master, today's matter was my stepsister's rudeness. Please be magnanimous and don't lower yourself to her level." For some reason, the fifth young master's complexion suddenly turned green. Chapter 2461. Immediately after, he very abruptly fell backward limply. Young master. Shocked, Lingu hurriedly went up to support fifth young master Qin as she looked at her young master in horror. Fifth Qin didn't expect that his illness would act up again here. This illness came with such ferocity that it could topple mountains and overturn seas. For a moment, his entire body turned ice cold, and he couldn't stop trembling. Gritting his teeth, he firmly grabbed Ling Ji's hand and said, "Let's go." How could Lingu dare to hesitate? She quickly supported her young master's arm and signaled the hidden guard with her eyes. After supporting fifth young master, the group quickly turned and left. This time, there was no time to pursue Mu Royan's matter. Upon seeing this, Mu Roxian also secretly heaved a sigh of relief. Although she wasn't afraid of the Qin family's power, it would naturally be best if they didn't offend them. If they really offended the Qin estate, then the issue of medicinal pills would also be a huge headache for the Mu family. After all, that was the #1 medicinal patrician family. Arbor swept a glance at them and pursed his lips dispiritedly. Boring. They only fought for a short while and it's already over. She hadn't seen enough of the commotion. Poor Jojo. It was mainly because that youth's body was too weak. They hadn't even made a move on him, yet he had already collapsed first. It truly made one speechless. Was it really good for a youth's body to be so weak? Translator, Atlas Studios editor, Atlas Studios. A fair and tender hand tugged at her husband's sleeve. Although no expression could be discerned from Miss Chiao's stoic face, Mo Lien still miraculously sensed her wife's displeasure. Lowering her head and smiling at her, Mo Lien said softly, "I'll make something delicious for you when we get back." She then led her out of the corridor. But right at this moment, the maidservant beside Mu Royan looked at Arbor with a flicker in her eyes. She hurriedly whispered a few words into Mu Royan's ear. Mu Royan's originally pale face immediately glowed, and her eyes flickered as she asked softly, "Did you see clearly?" This servant saw it clearly. This servant arrived a bit earlier than the missus. At that time, the river was filled with shoals of fish, and it was that young lady who took out a storage talisman. The Mu family maidservant's eyes flickered as she looked at Xiao Mu, and she quickly explained to Mu Ruyan. Mu Ruyan's thoughts immediately moved. She saw that the plain-clothed woman pointed at by the servant girl was about to walk out of the corridor with a man. She hurriedly shouted from behind without thinking, "Hey, that girl, stop right there." Compared to Mu Ruyan, Mu Ruxian was much more composed and elegant. Upon hearing this, she couldn't help but glare at her angrily. "Don't cause any more trouble for me." She simply hated this concubine-born sister to death. She was unable to accomplish anything but was good at spoiling things. With her arrogant and peacock personality, sooner or later, she would bring disaster to the entire Mu family. "Big sister, what did I do?" Mu Ruyan was also angry with Mu Ruxian. She thought in her heart that this Mu Ruxian was truly evil. She clearly had the opportunity to rescue her from the Qin estate's secret guards, yet she just had to wait for so long, causing her to make a fool of herself in front of everyone. She would settle this score with her when she returned. Mu Ruyan already bore a grudge against Mu Ruxian in her heart. When she heard this, she only glanced coldly at her before ordering the maidservants beside her to clamor. "Are they all dead? Go and stop them." A few Mu family maidservants rushed up and bared their fangs and brandished their claws to touch Arbor's arm. Unexpectedly, before they could get close, they were stopped by the cold-faced Fong Su, Eunuch Hu, and the others. Impudent. Chapter 2462. Eunuch Hu had been by the emperor's side for a long time and had unknowingly developed the aura of a superior. This kind of aura could not be seen with the naked eye, but one could feel it when standing beside them. With such a simple shout, the Mu family's maidservants were stunned. They shrunk their heads and withdrew their hands. Their gazes were somewhat frightened as they froze on the spot. Mu Ruyan flung Mu Ruxian's hand away and quickly walked forward, her gaze sweeping over Arbor. Suddenly, her gaze paused on Prince Emo. The man in front of her was truly magnificent. His appearance was outstanding, and it was hard not to notice him. However, his cold gaze and uncontrollable aura made Mu Ruyan shrink her neck. Even if she wanted to, she did not have the guts to touch such a tyrannical man. Thinking about it, the Qin estate's fifth young master was gentle and handsome, with a good temperament. At this moment, Mu Ruyan had probably forgotten about the fifth young master's coldness and ruthlessness towards her. She thought back to the fifth young master's gentle smile at the flower-admiring banquet hosted by Madame Gua. At that time, she suspected that she was flying in the sky. She could clearly feel the aura of the clouds and the wind. It was really too beautiful. Arbor sized up the woman in front of her. Seeing her idiotic expression, she could not help but ask, "What are you doing? A good dog does not block the way." This woman had rushed forward after scolding her. With so many people surrounding them, it was obvious that she was up to no good. Arbor originally did not expect to clash with the Mu family so quickly. Unfortunately, things did not go as she wished. There were always blind Mu family members who came to provoke her. Since that was the case, she would beat them until they did not dare to bother her again. The little fellow secretly hooked her finger, preparing to summon the feral to attack. She heard Mu Ruyan's idiotic voice say to her, "You. Hand over the storage talisman." Arbor. Did she hear wrongly? Was there something wrong with her ears, or was there something wrong with this woman's brain? Why did she think that Sir Jojo would take out the storage talisman and respectfully hand it to her when she, Mu Ruyan, opened her mouth? Did she think that she was a queen? Jojo-sama was still a young emperor. This was simply inexplicable and unreasonable. Arbor narrowed his eyes. Just as he was about to flare up, Mu Ruxian rushed over and tugged at Mu Ruyan. She said impatiently, "What are you doing?" Arbor wasn't the only one who felt that Mu Ruyan was crazy. Even Mu Ruyan's eldest sister, Mu Ruxian, felt that her stepsister's brain had been dug out and filled with shit. Who do you think you are? Arbor scolded coldly. Get lost. The little girl's scolding tone was neither high nor low, and her words were very sharp. She was too lazy to say anything more. Mu Ro Yen was so angry that her face turned red. She stretched out her arms to block the two of them, decisively blocking their path. However, her mouth continued to clamor, "You little slut, you dare to be so arrogant after being a thief? I dare you to say that again." Xiao Mu glared with an ominous glint in her eyes. The little girl did not have any protective feelings for the fairer sex. She was ready to beat someone up at any time. This Mu Ro Yen must be tired of living. For some reason, Mu Ro Yan's originally nonsensical words were stuffed into her throat by the little girl's fierce glare. What was going on? She was actually intimidated by this woman before her. Chapter 2463. Mu Ro Yen couldn't stand this thought. How could she be scared by a woman who came out of nowhere and cower in fear? It must be an illusion. An illusion. Mu Ro Yan's eyes were red with anger. She pointed at Arbor and turned to Mu Ro Xian. Big sister, do you know? This person stole our Mu family's storage talisman. I want her to hand it over now. What did I do wrong? Mu Ro Xian was stunned. Then, she carefully sized up Arbor. The little girl's appearance was so outstanding that people couldn't help but hold their breath when they looked at her. However, there wasn't any extra expression on her snow-white face. Her pair of ink-like eyes were especially captivating. Arbor was so angry that she was amused. Her cold gaze swept across the little girl beside Mu Ro Yen. What kind of enmity did this girl have with her that she would accuse her like this? That girl couldn't help but shrink her head and lower it guiltily. Arbor didn't remember seeing this girl beside Mu Ro Yen. Perhaps this little girl had seen it when she used the storage talisman to collect the fish this morning. There were so many people present at that time. She wasn't like Mo Yen who had a photographic memory and could remember everyone. She was there. Mo Yen didn't even need her to ask. She nodded and gave the answer directly. Although the scene was chaotic at the time, with Crown Prince Mo's eidetic memory, he was naturally able to take in everyone present and recount all the details of the scene. Arbor's wrist moved slightly. A storage talisman surrounded by blue light was released from her hand and hung in front of her. Are you talking about this talisman? That's right. Mu Ro Yan's eyes suddenly lit up. Without another word, she reached out to grab the storage talisman. She arrogantly said, "You still dare to not admit that you stole our Mu family's talisman? Who in the entire divine mainland doesn't know that it's a storage talisman? Only the Mu family knows how to draw it. Who do you think you are? You stole our Mu family's talisman and still dare to not admit it. How dare you be so impudent here?" Miss Chiao's cold, electrifying gaze landed on the hand that was reaching for the storage talisman. A wisp of blue spiritual cleansing flame suddenly appeared in his palm. Without any explanation, he threw it over and it abruptly exploded on the back of Mu Ro Yan's hand. Ah! Mu Ro Yen subconsciously reached out to cover the back of her hand that had turned red from the heat. Her eyes instantly turned red with anger as she stared at Arbor and screamed, "You crazy woman! What are you doing? Who's the crazy one? Those who aren't blind will be able to tell." Arbor stared coldly at the woman in front of him and approached her step by step. "Then do you dare to make a bet with me?" Mu Ro Yen would never admit it. For a moment, she retreated 2 steps in fear. "Let's bet on which one of us can draw a storage talisman on the spot." Arbor looked at her coldly and took another step forward. "Do you dare? Idiot! If you can make an identical blue storage talisman, I will publicly apologize to your Mu family. You can beat me or scold me as you please. If you can't..." Her voice instantly turned cold. She pointed at Mu Ro Yan's chest and said sternly, "Then kneel down." Kowtow 100 times to me and admit your mistake. Loudly tell everyone that you're the reincarnation of a stupid pig and possessed by a drama queen. Mu Ro Yen abruptly took a step back. If it weren't for the two Mu family girls supporting her from behind, her legs might have given way. Chapter 2464. Mu Ro Yan's lips quivered as she fiercely swallowed down a mouthful of saliva. She glared at Xiao Mu with flickering eyes. On what basis should I, the second miss of the Mu family, accept your bet just because you say you want to bet? You don't dare. Arbor raised his hand and patted Mu Ro Yan's cheek. His cold eyes were filled with a vicious glint. If you don't dare, then behave yourself from now on. If you see me, then take a detour in the future. Do you hear me? The little girl's voice was slow and crisp, like a light feather gently brushing past everyone's hearts. Ro Yen, stop fooling around. How could Mu Ro Xian not know how shallow her stepsister's eyelids were? She must have heard from the servant beside her that this little girl had a storage talisman. She must have been very envious and wanted to snatch the storage talisman from her. After all, this storage talisman was an extremely precious item even in their Mu family. It was a reward for those who had made outstanding contributions to the family. Although Mu Ro Yen was the second miss of the Mu family and her stepsister, she had never owned a storage talisman in her entire life. Mu Ro Yen stiffened her neck. Of course, she couldn't shrink back just like that. Otherwise, what would others think of her as the second miss of the Mu family? Bet. 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 Mu Roxuan, who was standing behind her, was so angry that her eyes turned red. If it weren't for the fact that they were in front of so many people, she really wanted to give her a slap and beat her up until her head split open. Stupid pig, she was indeed a big stupid pig. That girl really didn't say anything wrong about her. She was already like this, yet she still fell for someone else's provocation. Was this girl born without a brain? It was a small matter for her to agree, but when the time came, the Mu family would lose a lot of face. The entire Mu family would become the laughing stock of the entire divine continent because of this idiotic sentence. Since that little girl could make such a bet, the truth was very obvious, okay? That storage talisman must have been personally drawn by that little girl. That's why she was so sure that she could win. Mu Ro Yen, this stupid pig, stupid pig. Mu Ro Xian was so angry that her chest hurt. She couldn't help but reach out and pound her chest, breathing heavily. Although she didn't understand why such a young girl was able to create the long-lost storage talisman, she was certain of one thing. That stupid pig Mu Ro Yen was only an intermediate talisman master. It was impossible for her to create a storage talisman. Taking a deep breath, Mu Roxuan stepped forward and shouted, "Ruyan, don't mess around. Big sister. Why do you always side with outsiders and help them bully your own sister?" Mu Ro Yen looked at her angrily. Mu Roxuan was so infuriated by this concubine-born younger sister that smoke was coming out of her 7 orifices. She gave her 2 maidservants a look and angrily said, "Help second miss leave." However, Mu Ro Yen refused no matter what. Her arms were restrained by the 2 maidservants, and she kept twisting and turning her body. Her eyes were red from anger as she glared at Mu Ro Xian and said, "Eldest sister, I know you don't like me. My talisman crafting talent isn't as high as yours. But you don't have to insult your own sister in front of outsiders." Mu Roxuan took a deep breath and turned her gaze to Arbor with a trace of cold anger. If it weren't for this girl being so overbearing, how could the Mu family be forced to this state? "I'll bet with you. I accept the challenge." Mu Roxuan forcefully suppressed her anger and said calmly. "Make up for yesterday's 2 chapters." Chapter 2465. Xiao Mu nodded and didn't say anything else, only replying with a "okay." It didn't matter who she bet with. Right now, she only wanted to give the Mu family a good slap in the face. Why? There was no reason. She couldn't stand their arrogance, so she was itching for a fight. Both of them took a few steps forward and stood side by side. Mu Rochuan was definitely inferior to Jojo in terms of looks alone. Fortunately, Mu Rochuan was much smarter than her younger sister, Mu Ruyan. She knew that her looks weren't bad, but her looks couldn't be considered outstanding. There were definitely plenty of people in the world who were more beautiful than her. She also wouldn't be so arrogant as to think that she was the prettiest in the world. If she was in front of a woman with top-notch looks, she would be easily defeated. Then what would she rely on to win by surprise? Thus, Mu Rochuan had always paid great attention to nurturing her own temperament. In addition, her mother, Mu Qingya, was an extremely intelligent and far-sighted woman. Her taste and makeup skills formed a style of their own. Thus, after being nurtured from a young age and nurturing her temperament, the current Mu Rochuan could reach 9 points with her makeup alone. After many years of unremitting effort, Mu Rochuan successfully turned herself into a dignified, quiet, intelligent, and magnanimous woman. In the imperial capital of the divine province, who didn't give a thumbs up and praised the Mu family's eldest miss? Now, she stood there naturally and gracefully with a temperament as calm as water. Coupled with her beautiful face with almond-shaped eyes and rosy cheeks, she was extremely eye-catching and didn't lose out to the little stoic in the slightest. Begin. Arbor turned to glance at her and then said aloofly, "The time limit is 10 minutes. Whoever can draw a blue storage talisman wins." Mu Rochuan's heart skipped a beat. What did he mean? This young lady was so certain. Could it be that she could draw a blue storage talisman in 10 minutes? What kind of joke was this? Jojo had already given more than 10 minutes out of consideration for this Mu family's eldest miss. In reality, the little fellow's proficiency in drawing storage talismans had basically reached the point where she could draw them in one go. Lotus had always reminded her that in front of outsiders, the speed of refining pills and creating talismans must be slowed down, and slowed down again and again. It was said that when those talisman masters and alchemy masters saw her drawing talismans and refining pills so quickly, they would gang up and beat her up. He was simply crazy. Jojo took a deep breath, wondering how fast he should complete the blue storage talisman. From that side, Mu Ro Yan's piercing voice entered her ears. "Heh, the time it takes to brew a cup of tea. Are you kidding me? Unless you've prepared a blue storage talisman beforehand, it's absolutely impossible." Mu Ro Xian really wanted to go up and slap this concubine-born younger sister of hers to death. Her mother, Mu Qingya, had always told her that there was always someone better than her in this world. She shouldn't be arrogant and short-sighted. This concubine-born sister followed concubine Sher and acted like a concubine all day long. She had been completely led astray. Her illegitimate sister was the one who had the most responsibility for the current situation. Of course, it was also inseparable from the girl in front of her who was aggressive. Mu Ro Xian silently took out a small table, cinnabar, and a talisman brush from her inner world. Sitting cross-legged on the ground, she calmly picked up the brush and began to draw. In the current situation, the more she said, the more mistakes she would make. Many people were waiting to see the Mu family become a joke. It would be better for her to calm down and properly draw a storage talisman to prove that her Mu family was truly capable. Chapter 2466. Actually, Mu Rochuan was very uncertain. She had never successfully drawn a storage talisman before. The main reason was that there was a large missing part in the Mu family's talisman technique inheritance. Starting from the ancestor, the Mu family's talisman technique had been passed down for thousands of years. Over the years, the Mu family's talisman technique had become very, very incomplete. The systematic method of drawing storage talismans was not recorded in the ancient books. The ancestor relied on his own wisdom and talisman crafting experience to explore step by step. Until now, he had only successfully made 19 storage talismans. Only one of them was a blue storage talisman. She had already engraved the runes in her mind several years ago. She was one of the top figures in the Mu family's younger generation. Ever since she became a high-level talisman master, she was able to go to the top floor of the Mu family's most secretive talisman building to learn the best talisman techniques. All these years, she had been devoting herself to drawing runes. She really wanted to draw a storage talisman with her own hands. Even if it was just a small storage talisman that could store a few cubic meters of items, she would be perfectly satisfied. But until now, she had never succeeded. She didn't know if there was something wrong with her recitation of the runes. But she had clearly memorized the extremely secretive storage talisman in her heart. There couldn't have been a mistake. Taking a deep breath, Mu Rochuan forced herself to calm down. She dipped the talisman brush in cinnabar, spread out a talisman paper, and quickly drew on it. With a twist of her wrist, strands of yellow-level talisman energy seeped into it. Mu Rochuan was naturally confident that no one would be able to learn anything from drawing a talisman in front of everyone. After all, even if someone had a photographic memory and completely memorized this storage talisman, if they didn't have a systematic talisman cultivation method, it would still be impossible for them to craft talismans. After all, the foundation for talisman masters to craft talismans was to rely on their own talisman energy. This was equivalent to a person who only had moves but no inner strength, unable to display anything. Talisman masters were particular about inheritance. No family would spread the talisman energy cultivation method that they had inherited and developed. Mu Ruyan's brush moved and carefully drew the talisman in her hand. Even if there were people who wanted to learn it, they would feel a headache when they saw the winding runes in the middle of the book. If one continued to stare at Mu Ruyan's talismans, they would feel a piercing pain in their conscience. Although ordinary people didn't have much of a reaction, staring at someone else drawing talismans made them feel a little dizzy for some reason. They didn't dare to look closely. This was where the Mu clan's confidence lay. Not just anyone could learn the Mu clan's talisman crafting techniques. Arbor, on the other hand, wasn't that particular. She had been watching Mu Ruyan craft talismans with some interest. Even she herself wasn't sure how vast her talisman energy was. Anyway, she was much taller than Mu Rochuan, so even if he stared at her, it was impossible to stimulate his conscience, let alone make him dizzy. As she watched, she couldn't help but twitch her mouth. What kind of nonsense was this drawing? If she hadn't seen the drawing process of this storage talisman with her own eyes, she might have really thought that this was just a talisman drawn on a piece of paper. What kind of inheritance did the Mu family have? Why was this ghost drawn so confusing and complicated that even a profound great talisman master like her couldn't understand it? Could it be that the Mu family deliberately taught him this? Chapter 2467. The purpose was to prevent the legacy of the talisman art from being stolen by outsiders. That was why it was so complicated and difficult to draw. Mu Rochuan's forehead was drenched in sweat as she carefully drew nearly dozens of strokes for something that originally required 3 strokes. That shouldn't be possible. Lady Jojo shook her head with a puzzled look on her face. From beginning to end, Mo Lian's gaze never shifted away from his wifey. Seeing her shake her head, he couldn't help but laugh inwardly, thinking that his Jojo must have misunderstood something again. Jojo, you can ask your husband if you have any questions. Mo Lian's lips curled up slightly, and there was a faint smile in his voice. Miss Chiao subconsciously scratched her head and whispered, "Husband, is the Mu family's legacy of talismans the best in the Divine Continent?" "Yes." Mo Lian nodded with certainty. In the entire upper 3 provinces, the Mu family's legacy of talismans is one of the best. Tsang province's talisman family, the Qi family, is also much inferior to the Mu family. The Mu family has produced many talents in recent generations, and many of the high-grade talismans circulating in the world are produced by the Mu family. They are exceptionally precious. Then their talisman crafting technique was just so. Arbor racked her brains to think of a word: crude. That's right, it was crude. The runes on this talisman were drawn like tadpoles. Wasn't it incomparably crude? Mu Ruyan, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but exclaim excitedly, "Ha ha ha, Io." Someone started a serious bet, but unexpectedly, they shot themselves in the foot. How laughable. She saw that Arbor stood there for a long time without moving his brush and just stared blankly at Mu Rochuan drawing talismans. She thought that Sir Jojo was shocked by the Mu family's talisman crafting technique. Yes, it was indeed shocking, Arbor thought to himself. It was her first time seeing such crude runes. Wasn't the Mu family an aristocratic family with a 1,000-year-old legacy? A talisman aristocratic family that had existed for thousands of years, and their talisman technique was actually just a scribbled talisman. Miss Chiao blinked and looked at Mu Rochuan for a long time. Finally, she felt that Mu Rochuan did not deliberately use a trick to deceive her by painting in such a vulgar way. She was really drawing runes for the storage talisman, but she didn't understand the main points. Miss Chiao scratched her small face, feeling as if she had an unfair advantage. Her thin brows continued to furrow as she stared at Mu Rochuan, not moving for a long time. This time, Mu Ro-yen looked even more arrogant. She simply put her hands on her hips and laughed loudly. She shouted at Arbor, "What? You haven't dared to draw anything yet. Are you planning to admit defeat?" "Huh." Miss Chiao pursed her lips and remained silent for a long time. She felt that this bet was meaningless. If both sides had similar combat strength, it would have been more exciting to compete, but now that the eldest daughter of the Mu family was clearly not on the same level as her. What was the point of continuing to compete like this? This eldest Miss Mu had been drawing for a long time but still hadn't finished. She had been waiting for her for almost the time it took to brew a cup of tea. Miss Chiao raised her head to glance at Mo Lien, her small eyes filled with unhappiness. Mo Lien's heart softened as she looked at her. She held her small hand and said softly, "Let's not compete anymore." "Then, let's go back." Arbor nodded his small head. She had no choice but to move her feet. Mu Ruyan, who was glaring at her from the side, suddenly jumped out and shouted, "If you agree to a bet, you must accept your loss. You lost. Kneel down and kowtow, and accept any beating or scolding. You said it." Chapter 2468. Arbor's cold gaze shot over with a hint of mockery on her lips. Just like that, he stared straight at Mu Ro-yen, causing the latter to feel increasingly guilty under his gaze. Of course, she felt guilty. After all, she was the one who accepted the challenge, but eldest sister had changed at the last minute. And now, eldest sister was unable to draw a storage talisman within the stipulated 10 minutes. Although the little girl didn't draw a talisman, anyone with a discerning eye knew that this competition would end in a draw at the very least. It was just that the eldest miss of a talisman patrician family had failed to draw a talisman on the spot. This wouldn't be pleasant if word got out. In the end, the Mu family was still the one who was at a disadvantage in this competition. When others mentioned it in the future, they would only sigh and say that the Mu family had declined. The so-called genius eldest miss was probably nothing more than this. Look, look. Hey. What's wrong with eldest Miss Mu? At this moment, someone suddenly pointed at Mu Ro-yen and cried out in alarm. Arbor turned around and saw that the storage talisman on the table in front of Mu Ro-yen had already flown up and emitted a faint yellow glow in the air. Eldest sister. Mu Ro-yen widened her eyes in surprise. Arbor was expressionless. Mu Ro-yen's talisman energy was depleted, and she spat out a mouthful of blood. Eldest Miss. The two maids behind her hurriedly stepped forward and reached out to support her. The crowd surrounding the entrance of the corridor exclaimed in unison. Oh my goodness, eldest Miss Moo succeeded. A storage talisman, it's a storage talisman. Eldest Miss Moo drew a storage talisman on the spot. Arbor was speechless. She had never seen someone spit out blood while drawing a talisman. Mu Rou Xian must have used some secret technique to forcefully increase her talisman drawing speed, so she exhausted all her talisman energy and ended up spitting out a mouthful of blood. Xiao Mu's face darkened as she gazed at that woman with a tranquil expression and a somewhat unfocused gaze. She watched as the woman collapsed weakly onto the girl's body, her chest rising and falling as she gasped for air. Miss Qiao looked up at the sky speechlessly. If she had to draw hundreds and thousands of talismans in a night like this, eldest Miss Moo. He didn't even have enough blood to vomit. If it weren't for the fact that eldest Miss Moo was so exhausted, she really wanted to go up and ask her, do you usually draw talismans like this? Won't your HP bar be empty? Could his body still take it? Usually, the Qin estate must have purchased quite a few blood replenishing pills. Needless to say, what Xiqiao thought in her head was indeed realistic. The Mu family really did purchase a batch of blood replenishing pills from the Qin estate every month, and the quantity was quite large. Arbor. Let's go. Sir Jojo turned around and pulled her husband away. Fong Su, Eunuch Hu, and the others naturally followed behind them. They stretched out their hands to block the two of them and separated some of the curious onlookers. Mu Rou Yen couldn't take it anymore and shouted angrily, "Stop right there. Stop her. You're actually leaving." What? Seeing my big sister create a storage talisman, you know you've lost, so you want to run away immediately. How could there be such a good thing in this world? Do you think you can take advantage of everything? When did I lose? Arbor asked coldly. Of course you lost. You didn't draw any talismans. And my big sister. Are you an idiot? What are the conditions of the bet? I said that you must draw a blue storage talisman within the time it takes to brew a cup of tea to win. What about you? The talisman drawing was painful to the eyes. Giving them face and not arguing with them didn't mean that Jojo was afraid of them. Chapter 2469. The main reason was that the gap between them was too big, so Jojo had no interest in continuing the bet with the Mu sisters. What genius young miss! She was simply ridiculous. Rumors were indeed rumors and could not be completely believed. Mu Rou Yen was still about to hoot when Mu Rou Xian weakly grabbed her wrist. The crowd parted to the sides, and a man in green, about 20 years old, slowly walked over. His long black hair was tied behind his waist, and his cold eyes glanced indifferently at Mu Roxuan and her sister. Big brother! Mu Rou Yen cried out in surprise. Big brother was here. With big brother backing her up, would she still be afraid of that wretched girl in front of her? Mu Xingqian's gaze only brushed past Mu Rou Yan's face before landing on Arbor's departing figure. His eyes suddenly lit up, and he abruptly tapped the ground with the tip of his foot. With a whoosh, he flew to Arbor's side and reflexively reached out to grab her wrist. Xiao Mu immediately realized this with a start, but before she could do anything, Mo Lien had already pulled her into his embrace. He extended an arm in front of Mu Xingqian as he gazed coldly at the other party. What are you trying to do? Miss, do you still recognize me? Mu Xingqian was a bit anxious as he hurriedly said, I am Mu Xingqian, the Mu family's Mu Xingqian. Would it be possible for you to move to the boat with me? I have a few words to say to you. Cut the crap. Arbor looked at the man in front of her with displeasure. I'm not familiar with you at all, so there's nothing to say. The people of the Mu family were indeed all the same. Xingqian. Why are you walking so fast? A man's voice was heard hurriedly. Then, a familiar man ran over from the crowd. When he reached Mu Xingqian's side, he immediately saw Arbor. His expression was a bit surprised as he called out in a low voice, Jojo. Jojo. Seventh uncle, you know her. The ice on Mu Xingqian's face, which had remained frozen for 100 years, finally broke. He abruptly turned to look at Mu Jingrui, his eyes shining as he gazed at him. The fingers under his sleeves involuntarily curled up a few times, unable to contain the joy in his heart. Sure enough, he was right. This feeling of bloodline resonance was definitely not a lie. The little girl in front of him was his younger sister, his blood-related younger sister. Arbor's expression turned cold. He glanced at them indifferently. Shut up. Get out of the way. What's with your attitude? Mu Ro-yen shouted angrily. Shut up. Mu Xingqian impatiently interrupted Mu Ro-yen's scolding. Still staring at Arbor, he pursed his lips and said in a low voice, I don't believe that you didn't feel it. Just now, I was over there, separated by the torrential river and the dense crowd, but I could still feel you. Ha! Xiao Mu rolled her eyes mockingly. Don't be so vague, all right? I have nothing to do with you. Sorry, I don't feel anything. No, you do. Mu Xingqian bit his lip and shouted angrily. Xingqian. Mu Jingrui grabbed his arm, stopping his impulsive figure from rushing forward. You're crazy. Arbor coldly swept a glance at him. This glance was full of contempt, disdain, and indifference, mercilessly making one's heart tremble. It's that bad woman who taught you. She's the one who keeps badmouthing our Mu family in your ear. That's why you treat us as enemies, isn't that right? Arbor, who had wanted to leave, abruptly turned around and glared fiercely at that man. Mo Lien simply couldn't hold this little fellow back. Chapter 2470. She pounced forward, raised her small right hand, and ruthlessly slapped Mu Xingqian's face. She was so angry that her face flushed red and her entire body trembled. The ferocious beast in her heart uncontrollably wanted to emerge and crazily bite these people in front of her. She wanted to destroy the heavens and earth and make them suffer a fate worse than death. What woman? She shouted harshly, her almond-shaped eyes glaring unwaveringly at Mu Xingqian in front of her. When she let out a hysterical cry, she asked, Who is that woman to you? Mu Jingrui was stupefied. He had long known that the little fellow was not a good-natured person. After what happened to Lao Bai, he knew that the little fellow could kill Lao Bai mercilessly. He could kill anyone from the Mu family. You admit it? Mu Xingqian's eyes flashed as he looked at the little girl in front of him with 5 distinct claw marks. You know who I am. You. Scram. Arbor shouted angrily and kicked him without any hesitation. Xingqian. Mu Jingrui was shocked. Afraid that something bad would really happen to his nephew, he hurriedly dragged him back a few steps. Jojo, this is your older brother. You can't treat him like this. Mu Jingrui was also a bit angry as he said coldly. Scram. Arbor clenched his fists and shouted angrily. Following that, water rushed to the sky. Boom, 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 boom. It rushed out from all sides of the corridor and exploded like an explosion. The frightening water spirit energy shocked everyone. They hurriedly hugged their heads and crouched down to avoid the surging power. The entire river seemed to be surging and boiling at this moment. Crackle, crackle. The eaves around the corridor shattered piece by piece. Mu Ro-yen was drenched from head to toe by a water dragon. She fell to the ground, drenched, and stared at the little girl in front of her in horror. Was she a demon? What kind of frightening power was this? Jojo, Jojo. Mo Lien hugged his little wife from behind. He hugged her tightly and comforted her softly, Jojo, it's okay, Jojo. Don't follow me. The crown prince glared at Mu Xingqian and the others. The anger in his heart could not be concealed. Just now, his Jojo was still so happy, laughing heartily, her little face smiling like a little flower. How adorable. Now, he was in such a bad mood because of a few strange people. Mo Lien reached out and picked up the little fellow. With a flash, she returned to her official ship like a light cloud chasing after the moon. Jojo reached out and hooked his arms around his neck. Suddenly, he burst into tears. Tears streamed down her face as she cried out intermittently, "She's a stupid woman. Now, even her own son treats her like this. You think too highly of yourself. Patience in every possible way. Idiot." Arbor cried angrily. "You think you're good to me, but you don't tell me anything. In the end, you made me suffer for the rest of my life, tossing and turning, destitute, and becoming mud for others to trample on. You think you can exchange for a smooth and safe life by being tolerant in every way. But you don't know that I'm long dead. And died so miserably and without dignity." Jojo. Mo Lien's pupils contracted as he hugged her tightly. "This is my mother. She's so stupid. So stupid that I'm angry, so stupid that I'm going crazy." Tears rolled down Arbor's eyes. "But my heart aches for her. My heart aches for her. Mo Lien. My heart aches for her." Fragmented Dreams. Chapter 2471. She remembered that Wei Ziqin had once asked her if she hated her birth mother. How could she hate her? How could she hate her? That day, when she was sitting in the ancestral hall, hugging her cold memorial tablet and muttering. To be honest, she really didn't know what kind of mood to face her at that time. She also didn't know how to scold her. That was her mother, her birth mother, the birth mother who brought her to this world. Even if she sank into hell and went through 1,000 twists and turns for the rest of her life, she was still her mother. Moreover, Long Chuyun's original intention wasn't to make her suffer. She just wanted her daughter to live an ordinary and smooth life. Even if she was mediocre and couldn't return to the divine continent for the rest of her life, it didn't matter. Did Long Chuyun love her? Of course she did. It was just that the way she loved was wrong. Just as Arbor said, being patient at every step wouldn't make the enemy give up on forcing the mother and daughter pair. They would only use cruel methods to hurt her and her mother over and over again. If she didn't fight back, she would just sit and wait for death. This was obviously not the ending she wanted. "Mother, everything you've lost, I'll give you back. One by one, I'll take it all back." Arbor had already stopped crying, and a cold glint appeared in those watery eyes. She buried her head in the crown prince's embrace and gently bit that pair of thin lips. A bone-chilling coldness coiled around her heart. The Mu family, what they owed, they had to pay. Mu Xingchen stood by the mast and looked up at the approaching night sky. The scenery on the river was still the same, but he didn't have the slightest intention of appreciating it. He didn't know how long he had been standing here, but in the depths of his mind, he kept replaying what had just happened over and over again. The little girl angrily pounced over, and a fiery slap landed on his face. The little girl's hate-filled eyes were filled with tears. His heart was touched, and he subconsciously clenched his fists tightly. "What woman? Who is that woman to you?" She questioned him like this. She questioned him loudly like this. In that instant, his mind seemed to have gone blank, and all he saw was the little girl's angry little face. "Xingchen." Mu Jingrui walked over and sighed. "Don't think too much. Let's go back to the Mu family first and talk to Old Master about this. All these years, the old man has been trying to find his granddaughter. Everyone in the family knows about this." Mu Jingrui sighed. "Actually, I already found your sister a few months ago on Sikong planet." "A few months?" "Seventh uncle." Mu Xingchen abruptly turned to look at him. Then why didn't you tell us?" Mu Jingrui smiled bitterly and shook his head. "At that time, I knew that this girl had a huge prejudice against our Mu family. And because of what happened to Lao Bai, the little girl doesn't have a good impression of our Mu family. Mu Jingrui briefly recounted the confrontation between Old Bai and the little girl on Seacombe Planet, his expression somewhat thoughtful. Old Bai is too daring. He used the little girl's adoptive parents to threaten her, completely crossing the little girl's bottom line. Mu Jingrui closed his eyes and stood by the ship's railing, feeling the distant night breeze. He sighed and said, "Your sister is truly a genius." When she was on Seacombe Planet, she was only a level 14 mystic cultivator and an advanced level talisman practitioner. But after seeing her today, Mu Jingrui shook his head. She's improved a lot. I can't tell what realm she's in now either. Chapter 2472. Today, at the riverside, the water spirit surged violently, and the little girl's one move stunned everyone on the spot. Mu Jingrui merely felt that this little girl's cultivation had probably increased again. To be honest, Mu Jingrui simply did not dare to think of Arbor as a level 10 great spiritualist. In just a few short months, she went from level 14 mystic cultivator to level 10 great spiritualist. How could she possibly cultivate that? As for talisman master level, Mu Jingrui would never believe that Arbor had already become a black level great talisman master. 10 years. She said that she only needed 10 years to let everyone in the divine mainland clearly know that there was no such thing as upper, middle, or lower realms. Mu Jingrui took a deep breath and felt his throat tighten. The words that came out of his mouth were also somewhat hoarse. In order to prevent us from going to the lower star domain, the little girl even sacrificed a great deal of effort. She even did not hesitate to expend large amounts of talisman energy to construct a large shielding array above the Mo Kingdom capital. Just how much did she dislike them? Mu Jingrui laughed bitterly. Old Bai's threat caused her to completely lose any favorable impression of our Mu family. But I know that Old Bai's motive is for the Mu family's future. Mu Jingrui turned around and lightly patted Mu Xingqian's shoulder. Xingqian, you don't know her temperament, but I do. She's the kind of person who becomes stronger when encountering a strong opponent. She won't give in. A trace of self-mockery appeared on Mu Jingrui's lips. Back then, when we found her, Old Bai told her to return home with a lofty attitude. In the end, she really didn't appreciate it and hated us even more in her heart. I know that Old Bai is deeply ingrained with family values. He really doesn't have any bad intentions. He just looks down on my sister from the bottom of his heart, Mu Xingqian said coldly. Mu Xingqian said coldly, he thinks that since the Mu family has extended an olive branch to my sister, she should obediently accept it instead of resolutely rejecting it. Mu Jingrui laughed bitterly. That's right. He made a wrong move from the start. After that, because of my sister's rejection, he flew into a rage out of humiliation. He felt that my sister shouldn't go against the Mu family and him. Mu Xingqian coldly rebuked, "Seventh uncle, I really didn't know that a mere servant would dare to be so impudent and try to kill my sister." Xingqian, they're all dead. Old Bai's wife and son are still in the Mu family, right? Xingqian. Mu Jingrui was startled. He suddenly regretted telling this child these things. This child wouldn't vent his anger on Lao Bai's family, right? Mu Jingrui felt a lump in his throat and sighed. Let bygones be bygones. Moreover, Lao Bai didn't gain any benefits at all. I suspect that your sister can draw the god's summoning talisman. At that time, when that man covered in peach blossoms appeared, he only used the power of one finger to make Old Bai, a level 11 great spirit master, self-destruct. Clearly, his cultivation base is very strong. I suspect that he's an immortal venerable expert. Mu Xingqian's eyes brightened. God summoning talisman. This kind of unconventional talisman was indeed recorded in the ancient books of the Mu family's ancestors. However, the runes on it had long been lost in the passage of time and couldn't be sorted out. Mu Jingrui nodded with a wry smile. The little girl's future is somewhat limitless. Back then, it was my fault for not stopping the impulsive Lao Bai properly. That's why the little girl's misunderstanding of our Mu family deepened. Chapter 2473. I want to take her home. Mu Xingchen clenched his fists. I will definitely take her home. Mu Xingchen turned his head and stared at his seventh uncle, Mu Jingrui, with eyes like cold lightning. Mu Jingrui couldn't help but smile. He was actually only 7 or 8 years older than Mu Xingchen. The two of them were uncle and nephew, as well as good friends. Their private relationship had always been quite good. Seeing Mu Xingchen calm down and recover his initial calm, Mu Jingrui also relaxed and nodded. That's for sure. Mu Xingchen was about to say something when he heard a burst of exclamations from the surrounding boats. The uncle and nephew duo leaned over the railing to take a look. Under the dark night sky, schools of fish were swimming back and forth around the corridor, swimming in circles. There were a dozen or so colorful fish the length of a baby's arm mixed in with the school of fish. They appeared soft and sparkling under the moonlight, attracting everyone's attention. Oh my God! Is that a colorful divine fish? What colorful divine fish? Brother, you're very knowledgeable, can you clear up our confusion? Colorful divine fish? The kind that flashes with light? I wouldn't dare claim that I'm knowledgeable. I've only read about it in the Divine Continent Chronicles. It said that eating these colorful divine fish can increase one's divine power. Eating one can increase one's divine power by at least 10%. And it's said to be extremely delicious. It's effective for experts above the 10th level of the spirit realm. It's just that this thing is too hard to survive and raise. Wow! Is that true? Why would colorful divine fish appear in Wuxia River? The brother who was being flattered also said with a dumbfounded expression, logically speaking, this thing can only survive in a spirit realm. It can't be raised without spirit water from a spirit lake. Could there be a spirit realm near Wuxia River? What kind of joke is this? We've lived near Wuxia River since we were young, but we've never heard of any spirit realm near the river. That's not for sure. If there's a spirit vein in the depths of the river, none of us would know. Don't worry about this. Such a great opportunity can only be encountered by chance. Let me see if I can catch 2 colorful divine fish. That's right. Then we'll be rich. Everyone rolled up their sleeves, stepped on the bow of the boat and jumped into the river. At this moment, they couldn't care less about being reserved anymore. After receiving the news, all of them displayed their abilities and jumped into the river to catch the colorful divine fish that were mixed in with the school of fish. However, at this moment, the shoal of fish began to spin rapidly, and all of them surged toward a certain cloud. The speed at which it spun and gathered was simply astonishing. In less than half a minute, the number of fish in the river had decreased by at least half. The river was full of people. Many people were busy catching fish. When they looked up, they were stunned. He saw a slender figure in plain clothes standing on the deck of an official ship not far away. Her small, jade-like face was expressionless as she looked ahead. He quickly collected all the fish in the river into the storage talisman that was floating in the air. This scene reminded him of what had happened in the morning. It was exactly the same as what had happened in the morning. The school of fish in the water was once again taken away by the little girl with the storage talisman. The speed was so fast that it made people gasp in amazement. Slut! Mu Ro Yen panted in exasperation. She had jumped into the river and splashed water all over her, but she hadn't managed to reap any benefits. Chapter 2474. How dare this woman? How dare she be so impudent? Did this Wuxia River belong to their family? Absolutely not. The fish in the river belonged to everyone. How could she dare to put all of them into her storage talisman? She was so jealous that she was about to go crazy. Mu Ro Yan's eyes darkened as she once again swept to the bow of the boat. She looked up and saw seventh uncle Mu Jingrui and big brother Mu Xingqian standing by the railing. She immediately walked over with a belly full of grievances, her eyes red from anger. Big brother, seventh uncle. Look, it's that slut again. She snatched away all the colorful divine fish. I just heard people say that the colorful divine fish in the water can increase the divine power of a godly realm expert after eating it. Are you a godly realm expert? Mu Xingqian mocked bluntly. Mu Ro Yan immediately looked like she was about to cry. She couldn't bear to hear her big brother speak in such a tone. She softly said, "Big brother, I'm doing this for the good of our Mu family. If I get this colorful divine fish, I can give it to the uncles and elders in the family to eat. Everyone has their own fate. If it's not yours, why are you demanding it?" Mu Xingqian coldly swept a glance at her before looking away. "Why aren't you going in to change your clothes?" She didn't look like a well-bred young lady at all with her drenched appearance. She really didn't know how concubine shirt taught her daughter. She didn't have the elegance and bearing of a noble lady in the imperial capital at all. She was far inferior to Ro Xian. Mu Ro Yan was angered and had a taste of her big brother's medicine. She immediately stomped her feet and ran away while sobbing. She knew that in her big brother's heart, only that slut Mu Qingya and her daughter were his family. He didn't care about her, his second sister, at all. She's so unruly. She's made a fool of herself in front of seventh uncle, Mu Xingqian indifferently said. Mu Jingrui waved his hand and stood under the dome of heaven with his hands behind his back. He looked up at the vast starry sky and sighed. 10 years to stir up a storm. Does it really need 10 years? Mu Xingqian looked at him with slight surprise. Imperial capital, Dragon Flame City's western suburbs. The Mu residence was surrounded by mountains and forests, sitting on the ground with great enthusiasm. 2 spirit stallions with snow-white fur were dragging a luxurious silver carriage. Stepping on the short withered grass all over the mountains, they came to a stop in front of a large house. The words Mu Clan hung in the middle of the door. This place was actually the Mu residence's back door. The front door was located right in front of the mountain forest. It was a very grand place. The 2 old nannies who were following the carriage looked at each other and smiled. They took a few steps forward and bent down in front of the carriage. "Miss, we've arrived. Please get off the carriage." After saying that, he stepped forward and respectfully lifted the curtain. A beautiful servant girl with golden makeup lowered her head and got out of the carriage. She turned around to help the woman in the carriage and said with a smile, "Young miss, be careful." The woman was dressed in a purple dress. She held on to her maid's arm and slowly got off the carriage. She had willowy eyebrows and pink cheeks. Her skin was dark and slightly tanned. Her eyebrows were half raised, and her eyes were sharp and shrewd. Her appearance wasn't as beautiful as the little maid beside her. Fortunately, her clothes were made of good material. She looked noble and dignified, adding some charm to her appearance. She looked up at the Mu residence's back door, feeling unbearably excited. Really came to the divine continent. She came to the divine continent. She was about to enter such a large aristocratic family and become the Mu family's legitimate young miss. At this point, she thought she was dreaming. Chapter 2475. Gagaga. The Mu estate's black lacquer door was pulled open from the inside. The person's voice arrived before the person arrived, and a faint fragrance wafted over. "Ahahaha. This is Miss Chiao, right? Come, let concubine mother take a good look. Tsk, tisk, you've grown up to be so beautiful." The woman wore a plain satin dress made of floral fabric and an indigo robe with gold patches on the outside. There was a sunflower ornament on her forehead, and her figure was plump and well-proportioned, looking very graceful. At this moment, the woman's mouth held a trace of a smile. She held the young Miss's hand very affectionately, and spoke as if she was very familiar with her. The young Miss, on the other hand, was a bit ill at ease. She timidly glanced at the woman. You are concubine Mother Sure?" "Yes." Concubine Mother Sure's eyes flashed, and she smiled very warmly. She personally took the young Miss's hand and said, "Calling me Miss Chiao is too formal. Concubine Mother heard that your village calls you Jojo, right?" "Ahahaha. Then Concubine Mother will call you Jojo. About your matter, Concubine Mother has already told your father. Don't panic, don't panic. Let's go see your father first. Jojo, you've been tired from the journey. Did those servants neglect you?" No, they're all very good." The young Miss pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was awkward no matter how one looked at it. Seeing her coy and ungenerous behavior, the smile on Concubine Mother Sure's face deepened. When she turned her head and saw the young Miss standing on the threshold rolling her eyes, she hurriedly smiled and said, "Royun, what are you standing there for? Why aren't you quickly greeting your big sister Jojo?" Mu Royun swept a glance at the young Miss, rolled her eyes, and made a tisk sound. She turned and walked inside. What big sister? Looking at that rough skin and that big black face, even if she wore gold and silver, it wouldn't change her rustic nature. Before she even got close, the smell of horse dung and cow dung hit her in the face. It stinks to death. This child. Concubine Shirk glared at Mu Royun, then turned around and smiled at the young Miss. "Jojo, don't be angry. This is your sixth sister, Royun. She's been wild since she was young, don't lower yourself to her level. Let's go see your father now and get him to teach her a lesson." No. That young Miss hurriedly shook her head and smiled awkwardly. Sixth sister is still young and innocent. Concubine Mother, please don't teach her a lesson for me. Mother, I heard that my older sister, who is living outside, is only 15 years old. She's only 1 or 2 years older than me. Why did he look so old? You look like an old woman who has been married in her 30s. The young Miss, who was mocked by Mu Royun, had a stiff expression on her face. She was so nervous that she didn't know where to put her hands and feet. Child, what are you talking about? Concubine Shirk glared angrily at her daughter. She went forward and pulled her young Miss with a smile. Don't listen to her nonsense. All these years, you've suffered so much outside. When you come back, you have to take good care of yourself. This flower-like appearance, you'll definitely be able to recover. Don't worry, our Mu family has a lot of beautifying pills. Just eat a few. Thank you, concubine. That young Miss's voice clearly carried a trace of excitement. That pettiness that couldn't be seen in the Hall of Elegance caused the smile in Concubine Shure's eyes to deepen. Go. Let's go see your father. Your father is waiting for us in the main courtyard. Chapter 2476. The woman pursed her lips to hide the mockery and amusement in her eyes. She pulled the young Miss's hand and walked toward the main courtyard. Pushing open the main courtyard's doors, Concubine Shure pulled the young Miss inside and called out with a smile, Lord is overjoyed, Lord. Our family's Miss has returned. Along the way, all the servants used curious gazes to size up this slightly tanned young Miss, who clearly looked like a country bumpkin, and secretly inquired about her identity. Concubine Shure cheerfully pulled the young Miss's hand into the main hall. When she saw Mu Qingya sitting beside Mu Jingfeng and leisurely looking up at her, the smile on her face involuntarily stiffened. Mu Jingfeng's eyebrows reached his temples, and his eyes were cold. Dressed in a cyan robe, his figure was tall and straight, and his appearance was young and handsome. It was impossible to tell that he was a middle-aged man. Mu Xingchen's appearance was 50 to 60% similar to his father's. Concubine Shure tugged at the dazed young Miss and hurriedly said, what are you spacing out for? Jojo, quickly greet father. Wait. Mu Qingya spoke coldly and raised her hand. Concubine, sure, I remember Xingqian telling me that his younger sister looks like she's 15 years old and is very beautiful. That young Mrs. face abruptly stiffened, and her hands, which had shrunk into her sleeves, clenched tightly, unable to suppress the faint trembling. Moreover, didn't you leave the matter of finding the young miss to Xingqian? Where did you bring her back from? Mu Qingya glanced at the woman mockingly and turned to say to Mu Jingfeng, Lord, this matter is of great importance. We still have to investigate it properly. Mu Jingfeng coldly looked at the young woman standing below, who looked like a cowardly quail. His brows suddenly furrowed. Sister, what do you mean by that? Eldest young master is concerned about his younger sister, but don't tell me I'm not concerned about our Mu family's young miss who has been stranded outside. I'm being kind by bringing the young miss back from a lower star domain like Seekong planet. Don't wrongly accuse me. Mu Qingya heavily placed the teacup on the side table. Shi Huixin, watch your words. Do I, as the madam of the household, need to wrongly accuse you, a concubine? Concubine Shi secretly pursed her lips and forcefully tugged at the young miss in her hands. The young lady hurriedly knelt down and said timidly, Greetings, father, mother. Concubine Shi covered her mouth and laughed. I have evidence here. Bring him in. Soon after, a man and a woman were pushed into the hall. They stood in the middle of the hall and hurriedly knelt down. The old woman, who looked to be in her 50s, shouted at the top of her lungs, Master Mu, Madam Mu. I can prove it, this boy, that he's screaming, Arbor. I am her adoptive father's aunt. My surname is Li. The old woman chuckled and tugged at the thin and tall man beside her. This is my son, Akong. We are very familiar with her adoptive father's family. We all lived together in Quoto village on Seekong planet for many years, The old woman's lips curled as she hurriedly said, Master Mu, Madam Mu, Jojo is very good. Their whole family is very good. Mu Qingya frowned and turned to say to Mu Jingfeng, Xingqian, this child, told me not long ago that her younger sister came to the divine continent, which means that our young miss came to the divine continent by herself. But concubine Shi picked someone up from Seekong planet now? I'm afraid you picked her up wrongly. Chapter 2477. When concubine Shi heard this, she rebutted indignantly, Sister, I don't like what you're saying. Although eldest young master's cultivation is high, it doesn't mean that he's accurate in judging people. Does he have evidence to prove that the young lady he met in China is the one from our Mu family who was stranded outside? You casually found two people here, and that's proof. Mu Qingya said indifferently, You're the one with a bad brain, yet you want to think that other people's brains are bad as well. Husband. Concubine Shi immediately pouted, looking like she was complaining to the heavens and earth but daring not to complain to her mistress. She pulled out a handkerchief from under her sleeve to wipe her eyes and sobbed. This concubine worked hard and inquired from many sources for the sake of this family. It wasn't easy for this concubine to bring our young lady back, yet madam is still making things up for me like this. Enough. Mu Jingfeng, who had been silent for a long time, suddenly spoke. He stood up and coldly said, Deal with this matter as you see fit. There's no need to tell me too much about these inner residence matters. Mu Jingfeng strode out of the hall, not even sparing a glance at the young lady kneeling on the ground from the corner of his eye. The old woman kneeling behind the young lady secretly pursed her lips and sneakily looked up to exchange glances with her son beside her. Concubine Shi chuckled and looked up at Mu Qingya provocatively. Madam, then. Since husband has spoken, please arrange a courtyard for the young lady to stay in. It turned out that in husband's heart, this daughter who had been stranded outside wasn't that important. A mocking glint flitted across Shi Huixin's eyes. Mu Qingya coldly glanced at her, her gaze landing on the cowering young lady kneeling on the ground. What's your name? Xiao. Xiao, Jojo. She's called Mu Xiao, Shi Huixin answered with a chuckle. Madam, you can just call her Jojo. Half an hour later. The old woman pulled her son and returned to the small courtyard that Madame Mu had temporarily arranged for them with the young lady. Although it looked like a very ordinary small courtyard, the layout of the courtyard and the room, the silks, satins, and embroidery simply dazzled the three. The three of them had never lived in such a nice courtyard in their entire lives. They hurriedly entered the room together. The old woman immediately cried out excitedly, Chun, Song, this time, the three of us will have a good life. Mother, you're taking too much of a risk. If you ask me to pretend to be someone from Arbor and they find out, they'll kill us like we're ants. We won't even be able to reason with them. As soon as her son shouted, his mouth was covered by the old woman. What are you yelling about? The old woman sneakily hid behind the door to take a look. Fortunately, there were no servants in the garden. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief and hit her son's arm hard. This is related to your sister's future happiness. I'm telling you, you better watch your mouth and don't go around talking nonsense. Chun, don't be afraid. This matter, I think. The old woman's small eyes flashed, moreover, we didn't come here on our own accord. It was that concubine Shi who brought you back. Even if there's a problem, it's their own fault. What does it have to do with us? Xiao Chun nervously pinched her handkerchief, her heart uneasy as she said, but that sixth sister today, that Mu Royun, said the moment she saw me, she said that I was acting old. Chapter 2478. She was 21 years old now, so it was impossible for her to pretend to be a 15-year-old girl. Moreover, she had been hiding on Seacombe Planet all these years, living the life of a beggar in the open, so her skin naturally couldn't be as supple as a young girl's. Chun, don't be afraid. Mother is here for everything. Madame Nay put her hands on her hips and puffed out her chest. Just stay here with peace of mind. To outsiders, just say that I'm your aunt. Your younger brother is your younger cousin. The three of us will stay here for a while first. Mother, I heard that the people here are all cultivating. What kind of cultivation have they cultivated to? Spiritualists, right? That seems to be the case. Look at your younger brother, he's only a level 3 mystic cultivator now. Then if your younger brother has the support of such a large family clan's cultivation resources, then his realm will definitely rise. Madame Nay had a good plan, and her shrewd eyes were filled with yearning for a happy life. Mother, we won't be exposed, right? Xiao Chun actually didn't have much confidence herself. How could that be? We just have to insist that you're Arbor. Who here has seen her before, so how could they expose you? Xiao Tsong had used some brains at this time, especially since he didn't get a good ending every time he went against Arbor. He kept feeling uneasy and felt a bit apprehensive at the mention of Arbor. Mother, can you not be so naive? What kind of identity does Arbor have? Is it so easy to impersonate the crown princess of Mo Kingdom? What's wrong with the crown princess? Madame Nay put her hands on her hips and revealed a shrewish look. She's already living so well, so she can just stay in her palace and be the crown princess. No one will fight with her for anything. Song, why are you so timid now? If your older sister gets the benefits, will you not get a share? Besides, that Arbor is still in the Mo Kingdom's palace on Seacombe Planet right now. Don't worry, she's living like a princess. This was the divine land. Who would know that she was the crown princess? We're all relatives. What's wrong with letting your sister use her identity and live a good life? It's not like she'll lose anything. After hearing Madame Nay's fallacious reasoning, Xiao Chun felt more confident. She nodded and said, that's true. This place is thousands of kilometers away from Seacombe Planet. If no one brought her here, she wouldn't be able to come over. Oh, isn't that so? Ever since the mother and her children failed to rob rice on the street and were sent to prison for causing trouble, they had been living in seclusion ever since. Miss Chiao had long forgotten about these 3 flies. Later on, these 3 people were exiled from the Mo Kingdom capital to work in the mines. By chance, they escaped and fled back to Quoto village in a sorry state. When Shi Huixin found the 3 of them, they were already on the verge of death from starvation. How could Xiao Yingchun not firmly grasp this opportunity to eat well and live well, achieve meteoric success and leave the hell on earth like Seacombe planet for the divine land? No matter what, she was also surnamed Xiao and was family with Arbor. Since her sister wasn't coming to the divine land, it wasn't a big deal for her to take her place as a relative, right? Mom was right. She was Arbor's crown princess. Every day, she was dressed in luxurious clothes and feasted on delicacies. Her days were so comfortable, so what was wrong with helping out a poor relative? From now on, she was the Mu family's precious young miss. Her days would definitely be better and better. Chapter 2479. Bam! Concubine Shi looked up at her daughter who rushed in and said with a frown, You're really becoming more and more rude. Mother, you clearly know that woman is a fake. Why did you bring her back? I feel disgusted just looking at her. She has an ugly and dark face. She's already so old, yet she's still pretending to be young. I won't call this kind of petty country bumpkin my older sister. Mu Royun said angrily. You child. Shi Huixin swept her a helpless glance and beckoned her over. Come sit next to mother. Mother. Mu Royun squeezed to her side and leaned into Shi Huixin's arms, pouting. Shi Huixin poked her younger daughter's forehead lovingly. Do you think mother is really stupid? Since we know that girl will come back sooner or later, why don't we happily welcome her back? It's easier to control her if we find a stupid one. Mu Royun looked at concubine Shi in slight surprise. Mother, you mean? That real Arbor is much more powerful than this fake one. More than more powerful. This idiot from a small family can't compare at all. Shi Huixin humphed. Let's find something that can't be shown in public and have it in our hands. It's much better than that girl really coming back to cause trouble. But Madam will be the first to find fault with this matter. A fake will always be a fake. Someone will expose it one day. Humph. Shi Huixin pursed her lips. That kind of woman is used to being a good person in front of eldest young master. She doesn't even find it tiring. I don't believe that she doesn't have any selfish motives. So what if it's exposed? By then, Arbor's reputation will already be tarnished. Shi Huixin waved her hand carelessly. She didn't tell her daughter many things. After all, her younger daughter couldn't keep secrets. For example, when she found out about Arbor's crown princess identity, she was actually very shocked. She definitely didn't expect that this daughter of the Mu family who had wandered outside would actually coincidentally marry His Highness the Crown Prince of the Divine Continent on Seacombe planet. That wasn't a small Mo Kingdom's Crown Prince. That was His Highness the Crown Prince of the Great Divine Continent. But so what? The Great Emperor would definitely not acknowledge this marriage. When the time came, the Crown Prince would definitely find another good partner. As for her Arbor. A trace of disgust and coldness flashed through concubine Shi's eyes. She should be in the dust and be trampled on by others. Her daughter should be coquettishly pampered. All the glory of the Mu residence should belong to her daughter. There was no need for an outsider to exist in this world. Qin Estate the opposite shore of the lake. When Qin Xian ascended Pan Yu Pavilion, he took off the cloak on his body and handed it over to the manservant following behind him. Little brother Xian, what are you busy with? I haven't seen you for a while. Omega Kotoku raised his head and looked at his smiling big brother. He asked expressionlessly, big brother, why are you here? Yeah, I'm bored. Eldest young Sir Qin sat down in front of him with a grin and didn't stand on ceremony. He directly reached out to take the teapot from the table and poured himself a cup of piping hot tea. I heard that you arranged for fifth brother to go to Weishi Langfang to relax. That's right. Eldest young Sir Qin smiled and nodded. I saw that he was cooped up at home and had nothing to do recently, so I let him go out for a walk. Second young sir, second young sir. A man dressed in yellow hastily ascended the pavilion as if he were flying. Chapter 2480. When he turned and discovered that eldest young Sir Qin was also present, he involuntarily paused. Yo, isn't this Wang Chung? Why are you suddenly not speaking after seeing this young sir? You can't even let me know about this. Do you want me to leave now? Eldest young Sir Qin asked with a grin as he fanned himself with a teacup in one hand. Speak, Omega Kotoku replied dryly with downcast eyes. Yes. Wang Chung glanced at eldest young sir, inwardly musing that this eldest young sir was still so insensible. After some hesitation, Wang Chung still said, this subordinate heard that the Mu family brought back a young lady that they had lost contact with outside last night. What does the Mu family finding a daughter have to do with us? Upon hearing this, eldest young Master Qin immediately waved his fan, showing a disinterested expression. It has a lot to do with us. Wang Chung suddenly raised his voice, his eyes brimming with the light of gossip. Eldest young sir, do you know that young lady's name? Her name is Arbor, but after entering the Mu family, she changed her name to Mu Qiao. She was also brought over from Sikong planet. She also came from that small place, Quoto village. Pft. Eldest young sir choked on his tea and started coughing violently. Qin Xian's eyes narrowed slightly, and her gaze also landed on Wang Chung. His handsome face was expressionless, but his eyes appeared especially sharp. What did you say? Could it be that he had heard wrongly just now? Wang Chung knew that his young sir would have such a reaction. He had always felt that his young sir would become somewhat abnormal when it came to that young lady from the Qiao family. Wang Chung's mouth twitched as he said, that is that young lady from the Qiao family. I heard that she was brought back to the Mu family. Yes, she is the Mu family's long-lost daughter. Young sir, this is quite dramatic, isn't it? She was brought back just like that. Eldest young Sir Omega Kotoku and eldest young Sir Qin asked in unison. Ah. That's right. Wang Chung looked at the two young masters with a puzzled expression. He blinked his small eyes and asked, is there a problem? The two brothers looked at each other and saw some doubts in each other's eyes. The biggest problem was that he didn't make a splash or create a ruckus. This was not Jojo's style at all. Since when had Jojo been so obedient? She was going to follow someone else back just because they wanted to pick her up. It didn't look like it. Eldest young Master Qin didn't know why he was laughing so strangely. He put away his fan and slowly poured himself another cup of tea, as if the guy who had lost control and almost spat out the tea was not the elegant and calm him at this moment. When did you go back? Why wasn't there any news before? Prince Omega Kotoku asked coldly. Just last night. It was already dark. Then the Mu family silently took her back. He left through the back door without alerting anyone. However, the other families in the imperial capital should have received the news by now. Back door? The two young masters exclaimed in disbelief in unison. Wang Chung, What was wrong with the back door? Was it so unbelievable? Impossible. Eldest young Sir Qin shook his head and snorted while waving the fan in his hand. It can't be Jojo. The young lady wasn't one to be taken advantage of. Not to mention the back door, even if it was the main door, there would probably be a guard of honor to welcome her back. Chapter 2481. Interesting, interesting. The eldest young sir clapped and chuckled. Who exactly is it that dares to impersonate my family's little miss? I'll definitely go over and take a look later. Young Master Omega Kotoku swept a disdainful glance at his eldest brother. Heh, when did she become your family's little miss? In that case, perhaps the little miss has already gone to the divine province. Eldest young Master Qin narrowed his eyes and sent the second young sir a frivolous look. Speaking of which, second brother, I've always wanted to ask you something. Back then, your clone was destroyed and you ran back with your tail between your legs. This matter has something to do with my family's little miss, right? How do you plan to deal with father? That old man won't take things lying down. You know that if the little miss comes, the old man probably has a way to sense her. I'll take care of it, young Master Omega Kotoku said solemnly. TSK eldest young Master Qin stood up with a chuckle with a flick of his sleeve. Since you know what to do, then it's fine. I'll go over and take a look right now. Just which audacious bitch dares to impersonate my family's little miss? This matter will definitely be very interesting. Omega Kotoku, since when did she belong to your family? You'll be beaten to death sooner or later if you say it so smoothly. After exiting the Qin estate, eldest young Master Qin was all smiles as he headed in the direction of the Mu estate. The eldest young sir searched the Mu estate's rear courtyard and finally found that Miss Mu Qiao, who had just returned home in a small, run-down courtyard in a remote corner. This simply made one speechless. The eldest young sir looked up at the courtyard of that small residence, then at the style of the upstart in the courtyard, and his lips involuntarily twitched. If his little miss knew that the Mu family was mocking her like this, her enmity and hatred would probably escalate. Shaking his head, eldest young Master Qin entered the courtyard with a TSK. Xiaoying Chun just happened to walk out and saw a handsome man dressed in white fluttering in the middle of the courtyard at a glance. She nearly fell head over heels for him. Her little heart pounded, and her face flushed red. She stammered, You are. Could this be one of the Mu family's young masters? This is too handsome. Xiaoying Chun's heart raced wildly, and her maiden heart thumped loudly. She actually subconsciously took a few steps forward. Eldest young Sir Qin chuckled and suddenly charged towards Xiaoying Chun like a beam of white light. Xiaoying Chun was overjoyed, thinking that this handsome young master was also interested in her. Just as she twisted her body and took a few quick steps forward, she was caught off guard and felt herself being swept away by a gust of cold wind. With a bang, she crashed into the side room at the back. Bang! 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 Bang bang bang! The sound of a beating that made one's hair stand on end could be heard, accompanied by the woman's whimpering cries that shrank in her throat. This sound continued for almost an hour before it finally ended with a short and sharp gasp from the woman. Alas! Eldest young Sir Qin walked out of the side room and patted away the non-existent dust on his sleeves as he muttered to himself, Why can't I control myself? How dare he impersonate Jojo with such an appearance, that when the Qin estate's hidden guards passed this news to the young master of Omega Kotoku in Crane Garden, the young master paused for a moment. Second young master's hand that was holding the brush paused for a moment. He looked at a black dot under the brush and silently changed to a blank piece of paper for himself. Bang! In the Mu estate's Wupu garden, Shi Huixin smashed the teacup next to her with an ashen face. Chapter 2482. What an idiot! Shi Huixin cursed. She had originally planned to bring that woman, who was unpresentable, to walk around the banquet hosted by Madame Goen today. She wanted to let this Mu estate's legitimate miss show her face in front of all the noble ladies. In the future, even if the real Arbor wanted to return home, his reputation would have been more or less ruined by this fake idiot. Who would have thought that there would be news that this idiot would be beaten black and blue by someone in the garden by himself until he was on the verge of death? Bodyguard Lu, go investigate. Go and find out what's going on. Shi Huixin's heart skipped a beat. Could it be that there was someone secretly hiding in their Mu family and had seen everything that she had done? She wasn't afraid of others finding out the truth. In any case, she just needed to say that she was deceived by Qiao Yingchun and her daughter. She was just dissatisfied that there was actually someone in this household who was secretly fighting for justice for that little bastard Arbor. Nanny Zhu. Shi Huixin turned to look at an old blue and white maid standing behind her and coldly said, "Could it be that the injuries are all on the face? When will it recover?" If she insisted on bringing such a disgraceful thing out, Madame would be the first to reject it. Moreover, her motive was too obvious. Nanny Zhu was an old nanny she brought from her maternal home, so she was naturally loyal and could understand her young miss's intentions. When she heard this, she couldn't help but spit and say, "That bitch, who knows if she fell on her own or not," but she still falsely claimed that she was beaten. The injuries are all on the face. The corner of her mouth is broken, and her eyes are swollen like a pig's head. In this servant's opinion, even if she used a beautifying pill and a healing pill, she'll need at least half a month to recover. How unlucky. Shi Huixin felt that her entire plan had been disrupted, and she slapped the stool heavily. The next day, Miss Qiao once again collected a shoal of fish. This time, the onlookers at Wei Shijiang didn't have anything to say. In any case, they were already used to it. Who asked her to have a storage talisman? They also wanted to collect a few fish, but their inner worlds couldn't store living things. Besides, the inner world was only a few cubic meters big, and it was used to store rare treasures. How could it be used to store fish? Sigh, comparisons are odious. He returned to Fish Orchid Planet and released the school of fish into the Orchid Sea. Looking at these jubilant fish swimming in the sea, they flicked their tails and jumped up, creating a series of sparkling and translucent water droplets. Arbor's eyes flickered. Mo Lien slowly walked up to her and held her hand. She asked softly, "Jojo, are you still going to watch the competition today?" Actually, he hoped that she would go. He hoped that she would completely forget about yesterday's unhappy matter and smile again. The little girl turned her head and looked up at him. It was as if she could feel his feelings. Her heart seemed to be touched by something. It was so soft that it was indescribable. She suddenly nodded her little head and gave him a definite answer. At that moment, Mo Lien's eyes curved into crescents as she smiled. Clang! The gongs and drums sounded again. The onlookers in the corridor cheered violently. More than 10 pill refiners rushed forward and stuffed buns with elixirs into the mouths of the 30 pitiful patients. "Are you feeling better? Are you feeling better, brother? Brother, can you see how many buns this is?" One of them stretched out a finger and waved it in front of the patient. Bam! Chapter 2483. Holy shit, he's down. Doctor, where's the doctor? Come and take a look. Take a look. Amidst the chaos, 2 doctors immediately came forward to check on him. They immediately fed the patient a vomit-inducing liquid and helped him to the side to vomit. Arbor. Mo Lien had been paying attention to his wifey's expression ever since they entered Langfang. Now that he saw the corners of his wifey's mouth twitch, he knew that the little fellow's mood was starting to improve. Since last night, this little thing had been listless. She ate very slowly, and when she spoke, she would only reply with 2 or 3 words when you asked her 7 or 8 questions. Her listless appearance made one's heart ache. Now that her mood had improved, the Crown Prince deliberately teased her. He squeezed her hand and asked, "Jojo, what kind of poison are these people suffering from?" Ordinary poisons can be cured by refining an antidote pill. But their symptoms don't look the same, Mo Lien continued. Miss Qiao nodded. With a flick of her finger, a small porcelain bottle landed in her palm. Jojo's exclusive antidote pill can cure more than 200 ordinary poisons. Jojo, when did you refine this antidote pill? I cooked it in a small stew pot in the early stages. Miss Chiao frowned. It's too ordinary. Mo Lien, pretend he didn't ask. He reckoned that this little guy was born to deal a blow to people. The two of them whispered in low voices, but it still attracted the sidelong glances of the pill refiners around them. When they heard the little girl's words, they glared at her with indignant eyes. What kind of joke was this? Using a small stew pot to refine pills? Did she think they were idiots who could be fooled by a few words? Oh no, this young fellow seems to be dying. Isn't this poison too strong? You brat, what kind of bun did you stuff into his mouth? It's wrapped in poison. A middle-aged man furiously pushed the young pill refiner in front of him. No, no. It's the antidote, I gave him the antidote. Impossible, even if it can't cure the poison in his body, it can't make his condition worse. Fuck, do you know how to detoxify? Doctor. Doctor, give me some vomit-inducing liquid. Arbor frowned slightly and turned to look at an alchemist standing beside him. Where did these patients come from? Of course I registered myself. The alchemist thought of the arrogant words the little girl had said before and didn't want to bother with her. But after thinking about it, he said, there's also a reward for signing up to take the poison. After the event, everyone will get 1,000 spirit coins. They are all from poor families. 1,000 spirit coins is enough for them to live for more than half a month. It's over, quickly suppress him, a doctor shouted. Several pairs of hands pressed down on the twitching man on the ground. Looking at the man's expression, it was obvious that he was exhaling more than he was inhaling. He was already on the verge of death. Arbor couldn't help but frown as he handed the bottle to Fong Su behind him. Feed him one. Fong Su was dumbfounded. The crown princess ordered him around and it seemed like it was very convenient for her to order him around. Why aren't you going? Mo Lien disliked his slow reaction and glanced at him coldly. The latter hurriedly stepped forward, slapped open the patient's mouth, and flicked a pill in. Hey, what are you doing? Chapter 2484. Everyone looked at Fong Su and was about to criticize him all at once. The doctor who was squatting down to check on the patient shouted, "Shut up. Shut up. His pulse is stable. Poison. The poison is cured." Everyone couldn't help but look at each other in dismay. What kind of immortal pill was this? It could cure the poison as soon as it entered the stomach. One had to know that this miserable brother had successively been poisoned by the pills and steamed buns made by several pill alchemists. Not to mention curing the poison, every time he ate a steamed bun, his body's condition would worsen. At this rate, they thought this guy would die soon, but unexpectedly everyone couldn't help but turn to look at the stoic-faced little girl standing in front of the crowd. This little girl didn't seem to find anything strange at all as she silently watched everyone. "Miss, may I have the antidote pill? Take a look." The doctor's eyes glowed as he stared at the medicine bottle in Fong Su's hand. This medicine bottle looked ordinary. It was pure white without any decorative patterns. However, the pills in this bottle were so extraordinary. Fong Su felt his hair stand on end from being stared at. Arbor motioned for him to pass the bottle to the doctor for inspection. However, the doctor exclaimed in a moment, "Miss, are these pills for sale? 20,000 per pill." The little girl waved her small hand as if she was selling trash, causing everyone's eyes to light up instantly. Mo Lien. My wife was really selling trash. After all, these were pills that she boiled in a small pot in the early stages. Naturally, their quality and effectiveness couldn't be compared to the ones she made now. "Aunt, I'll buy all the antidote pills." "Get lost, old Lee, don't you feel guilty?" How can you take all the good stuff for yourself? I'll buy it too, I'll buy it too. Miss, give me 10 pills too. Everyone clamored. Miss Chow silently took out more than 40 medicine bottles and sold another batch of the accumulated trash. Including the digestion pills she sold earlier, her spirit coin card now had more than 11 million spirit coins. In a place like China, where prices were abnormally high, she could be considered a wealthy woman with more than 10 million spirit coins in savings. After all, she needed spirit stones to buy good things here. Spirit coins were still somewhat useful in the secular world. The little girl took back her spirit coin card. Her big eyes were full of vigor as she swept her gaze over the crowd. Little alchemist, I am the shopkeeper of the vigorous pill store. My surname is Li. In the future, if Little Alchemist has any pills to sell, you can bring them to our pill shop. The price will definitely be fair. You're always welcome. Everyone was busy trying to worm their way into being friends with this little alchemist who looked extraordinary at first glance. Miss Chow blinked and started a conversation mode where she would answer a few questions. When everyone saw this, they said to themselves in their hearts, an expert is an expert after all. His speech is concise and to the point, and he's especially imposing. Sir Jojo had earned spirit coins, so his attitude towards the owners of these elixir shops was quite good. While they were listening to their long-winded chatter, a group of people hurried over from the entrance of the corridor. The leader was a manservant with red lips and white teeth. He was led by an older man to arbor. When he saw that it was just a young girl in front of him, his eyes revealed a faint trace of uncertainty. He raised his eyes to look at the old man. The old man hurriedly nodded and politely bowed to Arbor. Little alchemist, please come with me. Little alchemist, please treat my young master's illness. You don't have to worry about the consultation fee.